This meeting of the Eastern Area Planning Committee, Wednesday, the 19th November 2025. I'm Councillor David Took, Chair of this committee, and my Vice Chair is Councillor Sally House. The meeting is being live streamed and is available to view on the Council's website, and by attending this meeting, you consent to being filmed. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public is invited. And all attendees must comply with the rules of the Chair. Members of the public must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. To support this, please switch off your mobile phones or select silent mode for the duration of the meeting. Only those who have registered to speak in accordance with the speaking protocol will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. This is limited to the first 3 people objecting, the first 3 people supporting the application who have registered, along with the town or parish council and ward member. No additional material is to be circulated to members of the committee today. We have 5 applications to be determined today. Planning officer will be invited to present the report and recommendations. Next, I will invite members of the public who have registered to speak with Democratic Services Officer before the deadline to address the committee in the following order: public against, public support, applicant or agent, town or parish council, and ward member. Each speaker has a maximum of 3 minutes. Following on from the registered speakers, the planning officers will have the opportunity to address any salient points they wish to clarify. The committee members will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the planning officers before moving on to their debate. At the end of the debate, we will take a vote and I will declare a decision for the committee. And I remind members that when we go into councillor questions and debates, please state your name and ward for the benefit of the public watching, and speak directly into the microphones so that you can be heard both here and online. If anyone is using Teams, please ensure that you're on mute and your device volume is set to 0. Before we begin, a few points regarding general housekeeping. We're not expecting a fire alarm during today's meeting. Should the alarm sound, please leave the building calmly and without delay using the nearest fire exits. The meeting will be formally adjourned at that point and will only resume once it is safe
levels are slightly higher, and where the development would have a greater degree of potential prominence and visibility. And also the amendments have incorporated additional structural landscaping on the southeastern boundary of the site. Full details of that landscaping would be secured by condition. In light of the amendments, it is considered that the scheme would relate appropriately to the local character and would not result in unacceptable harm to the Dorset National landscape. This slide shows the front elevations of the various house types proposed. There's a variety of types and sizes of houses, and the applicant has, as I've mentioned, sought to limit the scale of the buildings towards the eastern edge of the site with these 1.5-storey dormered units. This is on the advice of the National Landscape Team. There's a varied palette of materials comprising red brick with some render, and one of the units using Purbeck stone in one of the more prominent positions on the site. The roof materials are a mix of slate and clay tile. The precise details of the materials would be secured by condition. The design of the units also, just worth mentioning, you may be able to pick it up on the slide, but it includes areas of feature textured brickwork to provide some visual interest to the elevations of the dwellings. This slide shows street scenes along the newly created access road. The top image is looking northeastwards, and again you can see the reduction in scale of the development along the eastern edge. The bottom image is looking southwestwards. This slide shows the proposed access arrangement onto West Lane. The access will be a simple priority junction. The existing pedestrian footpath that we've seen in the photographs continuing from the A351. At the moment, the pedestrian footpath terminates here, and pedestrians would have to step out into the road. So that would continue round and into the site. There is also an existing road sign that would be relocated. And as we've seen on the photographs, the site there is currently no pavement along West Lane at the moment to connect into the village. So provision is to be made for a new pedestrian route along the northern side of West Lane. This is on highway land to connect into the village and provide a new route into the village. And this is to be secured by a Grampian-style planning condition, which would require that the route is provided prior to the first occupation of any of the proposed dwellings, and would be delivered through an agreement under Section 278 of the Highways Act. The site is within walking distance of the Bog Lane Sang, whose location is shown hatched in red on the slide. This access to the Sang is available via the existing pavements along the roadside and public footpath network. The quickest route is shown in blue. And an alternative route would be available, but that would require walking on the road. So, but that would be the quickest route there. The site is located within flood zone 1, indicating it's not affected by risk of flooding from rivers and the sea. On this plan, flood zones 2 and 3 are shown in turquoise and blue colours respectively, with the remainder of the area being flood zone 1. The site is, however, affected by some surface water flood risk. As I've mentioned, there's an existing drainage ditch along the boundary, the boundary of the site, which is picked up in this surface water mapping along the southwestern boundary. That drainage ditch continues before transitioning into the site and back out again. And the plan on screen shows the 3 colours relating to the 1 in 30. Being the darkest shade, 1 in 100 and 1 in 1000, up to the lightest shade on the plan. As proposed, the access passes through this part of the site, so through the area currently identified as being at risk of surface water flooding at present. In response to the surface water drainage issues, the applicant has provided a surface water drainage strategy, which includes the provision of permeable paving to the access road in this orangey red hatched colour, with additional, that includes water storage underneath the permeable paving, with additional storage provided beneath some of the driveways on the northeastern side of the access road and to the south here in the green. The water would drain from that permeable paving with storage into a new attenuation basin in the northern corner of the site before outfalling into the drainage ditch, which then transitions out of the site. That would also be, just to mention, via a controlled outflow. So with the intention that the outflow into that drainage ditch would be at greenfield runoff rates. There are 3 protected trees on the site identified on the plan. The tree officer has confirmed that they are content that, subject to a pre-commencement planning condition, which would require the submission and approval of an arboricultural method statement, that the protected trees can be appropriately protected and preserved through the development process. And then moving on to just a bit of an update for you on the housing land supply position. Since the committee last met, there has been an update to the council's housing land supply position. The council had previously fixed its position with an annual position statement, which had confirmed a supply of 5.02 years. But that annual position statement expired on the 31st of October this year. And since it was published, there have been changes to the national planning policy, which have resulted in a significant increase in the council's housing target of 81%, with the figures illustrated in the table on screen. A new assessment of housing land supply has been published recently, and that confirms that the council cannot now demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing sites against the updated target as required by the National Planning Policy Framework, with the assessed housing supply equating to 2.53 years. That means that the tilted balance, as set out in paragraph 11D of the NPPF, applies. The relevant text from the NPPF, paragraph 11D, is highlighted on the screen. It sets out what's known as the tilted balance, which is part of the presumption in favour of sustainable development. The tilted balance means planning permission should be granted unless specific policies in the NPPF relating to habitat sites and SSSIs, greenbelt, local green space, national landscapes, national parks, heritage coasts, irreplaceable habitats, designated heritage assets, and areas at risk of flooding or coastal change provide a strong reason to refuse permission, or unless the adverse impacts of granting planning permission would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the development. In this case, the application is considered to be acceptable in principle. It's supported by the local and neighbourhood plan small sites policies, which in this location will allow for sites of up to 15 dwellings to come forward on land outside of defined development boundaries. While I've talked about the housing land supply position and the tilted balance, it should be noted that while it does apply in this case, the assessment that the proposal is acceptable in principle is not reliant on that tilted balance. There will be a financial contribution towards off-site affordable housing provision of £297,000, which is a policy compliant contribution, and nutrient mitigation is to be achieved through the purchase of credits. The development is considered to be acceptable in all other regards, and it is considered that the proposal accords with the development plan as a whole. The recommendation is therefore to delegate authority to grant planning permission subject to a Section 106 agreement to secure the off-site affordable housing contribution and subject to requirements for the retention and maintenance of the surface water drainage infrastructure, which would apply in the long term. Or the recommendation also includes the alternative, which would be to refuse planning permission if the Section 106 lease agreement is not completed within 6 months of the date of this committee. I'm just showing the headings of the recommended conditions, which are listed, with the full text is quoted in the report. And this is the reason for refusal, if the Section 106 is not completed, and that relates to the lack of housing provision. And we just return you back to the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have no public speakers on this item, so it's straight across to committee members for questions and debate. Councillor Brenton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brenton, Lichton Upton, but I am a Purbeck person and I drive past this site very regularly, and in fact gardened in Oak Tree Close, the bungalows alongside, for about 10 years, so I know the area quite well. I've got a couple of questions. These houses appear to have lots of visual interest, but there's no solar panels. We haven't mentioned rainwater collection or grey water. Are we encouraging money to be spent making them look pretty rather than and retro, rather than actually fit for the future?
There is at least one of the units from the elevations on screen does have solar panels. One, I can't speak to exactly how many may or may not at the proposal. In terms of the provision of solar panels and renewables, that is encouraged also through the building regulations, but those are of course separate to planning system and requirements. So we don't have a requirement that developments provide a certain percentage of renewables, for example. And on grey water as well, I would just mention that as part of the nutrient mitigation condition, as well as securing credits, there is a condition which would seek to limit water usage, and that can be achieved with a number of ways, with low flow toilets, but also grey water recycling is one of those things that can achieve that, and that's quite through the conditions.
Can I come? Sorry, I should have given you 3 questions in a row, shouldn't I? It might have been simpler. I'm concerned about the surface water, because the entrance to West Lane from the A351 and the eastern side of the 351 around that junction are regularly deep puddled whenever there's decent rain. So I'm not totally convinced that an attenuation pond to the side will, unless you're going to change the levels a lot, but I'm sure you can explain that in more detail. Also, there is going to be a footpath from south into the entrance. Is there, and there will effectively be a northern footpath going back towards Stowborough Village. Is there a sort of crossing point, a raised, not a bit of cobble, bit of marking? How, people are just walking out there. This is a route that is used regularly, coming in and out. It's a busy road, West Lane, and I just wonder why there isn't a sort of, perhaps not a, well, you're not going to get a zebra crossing, but some marking in the road that will indicate that, or does that come under highways? The other one is, we have 2 properties there where they're classed as possibly multi-generational homes, as in there's a downstairs room that could be turned into a bedroom. And my point is, all of them really, working towards an age-friendly society or age-friendly Dorset, surely all new houses should have entrance doors that are wide enough to take a wheelchair. So, but I am assuming that these ones have widened doorways. I would hope all 9 would, but the 2 that are classed as convertible, have they got widened doorways? Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yes, so there were 3 issues that I picked up there in terms of, in terms of the surface water, that has been reviewed, be careful what I say there, reviewed by the Lead Local Flood Authority, and they are satisfied that the design of the drainage that has been proposed would be safe from flooding through the lifetime of this development. So that the new, if I just point it out on screen here, the new access road, yes, it does pass through an area that's currently shown as being at risk of surface water flooding, but in implementing that, they would be raising the levels to provide the level access, and to create the access into the site, and then the new attenuation basin would effectively relocate effectively that any surface water. For want of a better word, it would relocate any surface water. It would collect in the northern corner of the site rather than where it would currently locate, and then it flows out to the drainage ditch, and there would be a maintenance requirement on that, and there is a further condition which requires full details of the maintenance and detailed design of all elements of the drainage scheme to be required. So the League Local Flood Authority is satisfied that subject to those conditions, the flood risk would be adequately mitigated. You asked about the crossing point next for the access into along West Lane. So yeah, the access is proposed to be along the northern side of West Lane. At present, there is a crossing point with an island in the existing access junction to the A351. I believe there's tactile paving, but there's certainly a crossing point across that junction at present, and highways have been satisfied that that is sufficient to provide a safe and suitable access to the development. Accessibility, I think. Sorry, bear with some accessibility. This is just bringing the plans up. No, it's yes. Sounds like 4. 5. Sorry. Yeah.
Either. That's gone down since. Highlight it in separately in between.
Sorry, we've just been looking at the detail on the plans. In terms of the design of the plans, there isn't a specific requirement in policy that all units are accessible or meet particular lifetime home standards. For example, there is an neighbourhood plan policy that encourages a proportion of development to be accessible or adaptable, which one of the units has been designed to be. In terms of the width of the doors, they're currently using standard door widths, but the design of the dwellings is such that if the door needed to be widened in the future, there's no structural change that would be necessary. If I can point out, I might be able to zoom in on this slide. It's a little bit blurry, but effectively you can see that we have the doors with a glazed panel alongside it. So if the adaptations needed to be made to those dwellings, then it would be possible to widen that door opening if necessary.
Thank you. Alex?
I accept the answer, but I'm quite dissatisfied with houses being proposed as easy to convert, and they haven't even put in a wide doorway. Not everybody, we should be able to invite friends who are in wheelchairs round to our houses just automatically without having to think about that sort of thing.
Okay, Councillor Coombs, tell me.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman. While you've been talking, I've just done a quick search. Building Regs 2010, Part M of the approved document M, regulations provide that new buildings must provide reasonable provisions for disabled access, including accessible entrances, doorways, and facilities like toilets and parking spaces. And the National House Building Council has guidelines to promote adaptable housing. So I think it's covered elsewhere rather than through planning.
It's still disappointing.
But going on to the application itself, you've talked about the new pavement that's to be constructed along the lane. I seem to recall that when we looked at the other application, that was going to be provided as part of that application. So we have two applications, both providing the same parking place. So if I can have some clarity on that, please. And also, there's extensive landscaping on this site. Who is going to be maintaining that? Will it be a management company? Will it be individual house owners? How's that going to work? And I see that there is a potential that the road could be adopted, but it doesn't meet our adoptable standards. So if we could just talk through some of the mechanics around that, about what that would mean for the residents that would be buying into those properties, please, because obviously there could be a large financial liability on top of everything else.
So in terms of the footway, that's certainly a relevant question, and you're quite right that the previous application on the northern side of the road, which came to committee last month, has a similar provision for upgrading the northern side of West Lane to provide a footway. Essentially, both schemes need to provide the same thing. They will have the same conditions, the same requirements attached to them, and we need to consider the applications independent of one another in that regard. So both generate the need for the upgraded footway. So both need to be able to deliver it on their own without relying on the other development coming forward beforehand, essentially. So that's why we have the requirement repeated in this application and this proposal.
Can I come back on that?
Yeah, sure. Can I confirm that the two developments are from different developers? So it's not land isn't in the same ownership, not the same responsibility. So these developers are going to have to work together.
That's right. I think if I may through you, Jay, yes, that's absolutely right. The developers, if both developers want to deliver their schemes at a similar time, we would ask that they would work together. Otherwise, that if one developer wants to push ahead and develop their scheme before the other one is ready to come forward, then they would need to be prepared to deliver the upgrades themselves.
I'll come back. That sounds like a logistical nightmare. And I can see a lot of brinksmanship coming into play and shadow boxing over who's going to take the first step towards developing it. Is there anything that we can put in terms of legal agreements to ensure that somehow there is a route through to make sure that, however equally it needs to be split, that the two are made to work together to ensure that pathway is put in?
Well,
because if one does it and the other then says, well, I don't need to, and I haven't had to pay towards it, there's got to be some sort of mechanism if they both have that responsibility in order that they carry out that responsibility in partnership.
So are you suggesting a condition, because we don't have a condition on the other site to match that, I don't believe, and I think that could be a difficulty.
That's why I'm asking the question. I suppose it's about some legal clarification of what can be done to ensure that the two are made to work together.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Yes, so we effectively, it's very difficult for us to force the independent developers to work together. If one of them wanted to deliver their scheme earlier and take on the risk and the responsibility for providing that upgrade, then that would be a commercial decision for that developer to undertake. And if they wanted to try and recover some of the cost of doing that from the developer of this site or the other site, then that would need to be a private commercial negotiation between those two landowners. We did seek some legal advice on this, and Highways advice as well. Because with the previous application there was a discussion and potential suggestion of the money for the to pay for the upgrade being collected as a Section 106 agreement contribution and then delivered by the council, and Highways confirmed that wouldn't be appropriate or possible, and it would need to be delivered under Section 278, and then that would have meant linking the two applications with kind of matching Section 106 agreement requirements, which is not something that we kind of can really do and insist upon. Yeah, I don't know if Phil, maybe, I don't know. From legal perspective.
I don't. It's difficult for me to check because I don't recall whether it was me that gave the advice in terms of linking the sites. I don't think I had anything to add at this stage. If you wanted a more detailed answer, I think I'd need a 5-minute adjournment to speak to him about how the sites link together and if there's anything we can do. But at the moment, I don't think I have anything to add to what's been said.
I'm happy to accept that, Chairman, but I felt it did need to be aired so that we all understand exactly what the risks are. Can I have a response to my comment about the open space and the management of that going forward? And that also takes into account the internal block paved road and its adoptability.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, thank you through you, Chair. So yes, we have a condition. Just looking at the, I believe. We do have conditions in there for the maintenance and management of surface water drainage. I'm not seeing the. I'm sure I had a landscaping condition. Yeah. What I would say, while Kim's looking at the actual conditions, is that generally speaking, we wouldn't. The model for how that is secured is for the developer to propose, and they would propose that through a landscape management condition discharge, and through the condition discharge for the drainage scheme as well, which is a condition. I will just mention that on the matter of the drainage, there is a part of the recommendation is for the Section 106 to include a requirement for the surface water drainage infrastructure maintenance to be carried out, and that would be, because that would be in the Section 106 agreement, that would carry forward to the future owners of the properties, because several of the properties have infrastructure in their driveways which include the drainage storage. So that's condition, and there's condition 14 which would have the details of the surface water management, and the adoptability of the road. I can't say for certain whether or not it would be adoptable, but if it's not adopted, that would come down to the individual residents for the maintenance of a private road.
Thank you. There's a lot there, which when I've sat on previous committees, there's usually been some sort of hint about how that would all be managed going forward, because that's a lot of open-ended impact. and responsibility on potential buyers. And it's disappointing that there's not more thought has been put to that at the moment.
There's no mention of the management company to look after anything.
Sorry, Chair. Not at present, but it may be that the developer chooses to go down the management company route, which they're free to do.
Okay. Councillor Skeets.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Skeets, Westmoors and Three-Legged Cross. Just to comment on Alex Brenton's mention of the design and solar panels, I actually thought the design was quite complementary to the area. I know the area quite well as well because a lot of us visit that area, of course. And my concerns, however, are on obviously the openness is going to be changed by those two developments, but the pond or the collection area for the surface water, clearly that area is quite important in terms of its greenery, its cover, and how that's controlled as well, which I don't think quite was covered by my colleague's comment. But I would have expected us to have had some sort of planting scheme or some idea of what that would look like. I mean, at the moment, it could be a concrete urban bowl of, couldn't it? Because there's nothing constricting it. So I think that we should have some sort of idea of what we're going to end up with there, and as a visible look to that development. Actually, I think the developer has obviously worked hard to make sure this fits in as much as possible when you're developing land in that area. But I think that's quite important, and we should definitely do something about making sure that that's controlled.
I'm sure that. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. So yeah, we have for landscaping, we have condition 11, which requires the details of the proposed landscaping of the site to be submitted and approved. That requires that detail prior to the commencement of any development above damp-proof course level, and that includes finishes, levels, contours, means of enclosure, car parking layouts, and other hard surfacing as well. And there's a maintenance requirement ongoing for at least 5 years on that.
Okay. May I come back, Mr. Chairman? Yes. So I still don't get the what that's going to look like in terms of visually from entering the area to the left-hand side. Is it going to look like a green controlled area which is fitting with the countryside, or is it an urban concrete block of scheme? I don't really get what it's going to be, so I'd like to know.
Yeah. So I'll take you back to the site plan slide. Sorry, Chair. Through the intention as shown here is showing it as relatively green. And we've got trees retained on the other side of the access. One of these being a protected tree as well. So I think it's fair to say it's intended that there would be quite a green entrance to the site.
Okay.
Okay.
So that means natural pondy looking. Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Shell.
Thank you, Councillor Hobbs-Chow and Hobbs-Chow, sorry, Fendown South Ward. Can I just check, there's a hedgerow on the road side currently, is there? Is there part of the conditions to retain that hedgerow? Because I think that's an important habitat.
Yeah. sorry, through you, Chair. Yes, that is the conditions. The retention of the hedgerow, I believe, is in the ecological management plan, which is secured by condition.
So the condition in terms of the new house owners would also have to, they cannot take that hedgerow away either.
You want to expect that wasn't part of this plan that needs to be approved.
Yes, sorry, it comes through the requirements of the ecological report, the retention of things. It's very difficult to condition in the perpetuity retention of things like hedgerows through conditions, but there is an ongoing requirement for 5 years to manage the site in accordance with the ecological report.
Okay, I'm assuming that the hard and soft landscape is covered by condition 11. Part of the approval would be that hedge is not removed.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes, I think we can, and we can, if necessary, we can put in an informative on that point if members feel it necessary.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Scott for it.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Scott Flork, Correspondent Ward. On that slide there, you've got the dwellings. You've got garages on the 3-bedroom and the 4-bedroom. The 2 bedrooms, are there no garages or is that just a store?
Through you, Chair. No, there are no garages for the 2-bedroom units. They have off-road driveway spaces, but they don't have separate garages. It's only the 3 and 4-bedroom units that are provided with garages.
Okay, any further questions? If not, then does anyone wish to make a proposal? Or make a comment in advance of a proposal?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I've listened to all the questions and the responses. I think I'm broadly satisfied that the way the application has been dealt with and brought before us this morning is something we can support. So I'll move the recommendation as set out in the report, Chairman.
Thank you. Do I have any seconders for that? Councillor Brendan.
Yes, I know this area. I think this would fit in. I think we are okay on this one. There's just a few things that I wish that we sort of ask developers to do, even if they don't have to before we start, but I second it.
Thank you. Any other proposals or
Do with one.
in which case we may as well move to a vote. All those in favour of the proposal to approve as per recommendation, please show hand. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All those against? But none against. Any abstentions? 1 abstention. So I think that means that P4 2022/07955 land at Stepping Stones Field, Scoborough is granted as per the officer's recommendations.
Chairman, before we continue with the meeting, we've got no power over here, so we're going to run out of juice on our laptops. Can that be looked at, please?
Yeah, look at that.
Yes.
So take a 2-minute adjournment while we look at that, and then we'll move on to land at White, Lovington.
Let's do something here.
It says
Started,
it's charged.
yeah.
Plug on the wall.
Oh, it started again
Yeah,
now.
I just changed
it's there
the-
now.
It's just turned
You
us
see a
on.
little.
Just kicked it over the wall.
Is that what it was?
I'm not happy with some of that detail.
I think he moved it from one socket to another.
Yeah.
No.
So
I don't think-
next item is P4 2022. Is 6/2020/0013. Land at White Lovington, Dear Regis. It's presented by Liz Adams. So Liz,
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. This application originally came before the Eastern Area Planning Committee on the 7th of April 2021. Members at the time resolved to grant planning permission subject to a legal agreement to secure affordable housing provision and land adjacent to the site as temporary heathland mitigation. And that was pending the provision of a larger SAN. Regretfully, before the legal agreement could be finalised, Natural England updated their advice about the impacts of nutrients from development in Port Harbour catchment area. And this resulted in a delay of over a year or so before mitigation became available to make the development acceptable. Then there was further delay as the applicants needed to undertake a viability test of their scheme in a new, harsher climate, and also updated their biodiversity mitigation to reflect the latest records for the site, which now include dormice. So your agenda contains an updated version of the original report. You'll see that the revisions are shown in bold italic type, and I've crossed through the bits that are no longer relevant. The main change to the proposal is that, supported by a viability assessment, the scheme is considered to no longer be able to support any affordable housing.
Surprise.
Like the previous item, I need to provide an update for SIL, I'm afraid, so the SIL team have now confirmed that has risen to 100,000, 100,811, which is different to what's in your agenda. This isn't a material consideration, as you're aware, but it is relevant to viability. So the site is located within Beer Regis in the Purbeck area of Dorset. Beer Regis is a sustainable location for new dwellings, as encouraged by Policy V1 of the local plan. The settlement benefits from facilities including, post office, shops, doctor, dentist, and the primary school. The neighbourhood plan adopted in June 2019 allocates land for residential development, as shown here on the slide in pink. That's under Policy BR7. And this includes the land off of White Lovington, shown here. The Beer Regis neighbourhood plan allocates approximately 12 dwellings on this site. A strategic SAN is also identified on land to the north of the settlement. That's yet to come forward, but there is an application that's being considered for this proposal and associated dwellings. As set out in the report, officers do not consider that the development conflicts with the neighbourhood plan, notwithstanding that 17 dwellings are now proposed. As Tom previously explained, we are now considering this application in the light of the tilted balance, because the 5-year housing demand supply can no longer be demonstrated. So the proposed development site is shown in red, with the settlement boundary in blue. It's currently grassed agricultural land. As previously shown, the site is allocated for housing, and no housing is proposed outside of the blue areas. The settlement boundary is influenced by the 400-metre Dorset Heathland buffer zone, shaded brown here, which is intended to protect internationally designated sites. Within this close proximity to Heathland, no effective mitigation has been identified that would enable housing, a net increase in housing to take place without harm to the protected heathland. Therefore, the development has been proposed to avoid this area and to keep the housing within the proposed settlement boundary. The Beer Regis neighbourhood plan identified a desire for new areas of open space as part of the proposed residential development, but did not include any specific policy requirement. Local Plan Policy I4 seeks a financial contribution towards sport or recreation areas where there is a gap in provision, but the Council's policy team has confirmed that there's no identified provision gap in Beer Regis that is relevant to this proposal. So while there's no policy requirement for open space, the proximity of the site to designated heathland and the lack of nearby sound provision at this point in time has meant that Natural England has identified the need for a heathland infrastructure project. And the applicants have suggested the temporary provision of an area of open space immediately adjacent to the housing, and that's this area outlined in blue. Those of you on the committee at the time that we considered it previously will remember that previously the recommendation to, the resolution to grant was based on a requirement for the legal agreement to secure this area, which will require its own separate planning permission. The provision of the heathland infrastructure project prior to the first occupation of a dwelling and its maintenance is intended to be secured by the legal agreement until such time that the council considers that it's no longer required because the new sound has come into play. At that point, there would be no policy requirement for the space to remain under other policies. And it's anticipated that the informal footpath, benches and bins for dog waste, which will be required for it to act as a heathland infrastructure project, would then anticipate to be removed and the land revert to agricultural use. This aerial photo shows an indication of the existing boundary vegetation. You can see the hedging along the eastern boundary, with and the trunks of these trees lie outside the application site. Trees within this woodland are protected, as are the trees on this southern boundary here. The site is on a gentle hillside, so at this point, roughly here, that you can sort of look down across Beer Regis in the distance. And then this area is the proposed HIP land in this corner here. And then this is looking north again towards Beer Regis, and you can see some of the houses in the existing houses in White Lovington behind these vegetation. So the proposal will extend the existing highway into the site, requiring the removal of several trees, but those are category C. The pavement along the northern part of White Lovington currently ceases outside number 16, although this land remains within the highway. As you can see here, this purple line is the highway bound extent. So the previous resolution to grant was on the basis that the pavement would be extended as shown on the site plan here, so along here into the site to improve pedestrian access. 3 properties are to extend the building line at White Lovington in here, and then a further 14 dwellings are provided in this eastern part of the site outside the 400 metres exclusion zone. So the properties are predominantly 2-storey dwellings, varying in size from 2 to 4 bedrooms, and there's 2 bungalows proposed at this eastern extent. The houses are a mixture of detached, semi-detached, meaning that 17 units will be provided within the proposed 12 structures, and the number of dwellings and their size is as set out in section 6 of the officer report. Originally, 6 units down here were intended to be affordable homes, but the current proposal before you is for 100% housing, a market housing scheme. So in 2020, when the application was submitted, the viability evidence base that underpins the Purbeck local plan had only recently been collated, and the applicants proposed 40% affordable housing, which is policy compliant, and that was anticipated for this site. Since that time, there's been significant changes in the economy, including as a result of the COVID pandemic and the Ukraine war, have affected interest rates and inflationary pressures. And although the Purbeck local plan was only adopted in 2024, the viability work that underpins the plan dated back from 2019. So officers have accepted that the economic changes since that time means that the applicant has got reasonable grounds to request a review of project viability. This they have done, and their review explains that costs have risen significantly. These include the costs associated with changes to building regulations, which are not yet reflected in the standard BCIS figures. The cost of nutrient neutrality mitigation, which is about £104,000, and bank interest rate charges, which have increased by about 1.75%. The nature of the project, which requires that long access road you've seen, and the building on slope involves higher external works and abnormal costs than factored in at the local plan stage viability review. The applicant's initial viability review on the scheme without any affordable housing suggested a deficit of approximately 130,000 when costs were compared to the site value. Dixon Searle, who acted as Purbeck District Council's viability consultant for the local plan, provided impartial advice on the submitted viability details. And when the applicant's viability assessor responded to their advice and also readjusted for a smaller nutrient neutrality cost, because that has now been finalised with the purchase of temporary credits and the provisional purchase of the longer term credits from Natural England, then the deficit has reduced, but it remains at 35,000. So Dixon Searle have looked at these figures and agree with the applicants that a wholly private scheme remains only marginally viable. So affordable housing, unfortunately, cannot be supported. Now, policy H11 of the local plan makes provision for an applicant to reduce their affordable housing contribution subject to full justification. Officers consider that full justification has been provided in this case. These photos show existing properties on White Lovington, all a two-storey with varying designs, and they have off-road parking and substantial frontages. The neighbourhood plan envisages a continuation of the low-density layout of the existing properties, which have a net density of about 9 dwellings per hectare. Concerns have been raised by objectors that 17 dwellings would be contrary to the Berry-Just neighbourhood plan, but officers consider this still represents a low density of approximately 13 dwellings per hectare compared to the average density of 30 dwellings per hectare, which is envisaged for development across other sites in the Berry-Just neighbourhood plan. I'll just quickly run through the housing types. There's 8 different ones, although some of them are quite similar. These 3 at the top of the site try to make references to architectural features on the existing road. Then you've got this houses down here, which are 4-bedroom with car barn. And then there's 2 pairs of semis providing 3 bedrooms. And then we're going to secure details of the roofing and external materials via condition. And then the house type 1 is a 2-bedroom semi-detached property. And neighbours of the Parish Council have raised some concern that semi-detached property is out of keeping with the character of White Lovington. But it's noted that in the Purbeck area, the strategic housing market assessment does identify this need for smaller properties. And the building designs include appropriate architectural features. This rear view from Rye Hill will be screened by the existing hedgerow trees and the differences in land levels. Again, house type 2, these are all very similar, slightly different internal designs. And then you've got the bungalows to the north. That roof light there is serving the hallway. So neighbouring amenity was raised as an issue. The low density of both the proposed and the existing site and the existing landscaping will assist in mitigating the impact of the proposals. The separation distances are generous. You've got approximately 30 metres between these properties, and these 2 are bungalows, so there's less issue of any overlooking. You've got a separation distance of 10 metres from this bungalow to the boundary. It is considered necessary to secure finished floor levels. There is an indicative finished floor level plan that was provided with the application, and I believe I've still left it on the plans condition, so I would request that be removed, because we've actually suggested that a condition is added in order to secure full finalised finished floor levels and details that allow us to make full consideration of the existing properties. The closest relationship between the proposal and the existing site is this relationship with number 12, and the side elevation of unit 1 is about 12 metres from the existing property. There is a first floor window proposed, which is to serve a secondary window serving bedroom 4. Given the landscape boundary and the distance, I think previously members were satisfied that that was acceptable, but if you did want to add an obscure glazing condition and you think that's justified, that's available to you. There is potential for perception of overlooking of the garden of number 6 because these are 2-storey properties. But again, separation distance of 27 metres building to building, and there's decent boundary vegetation, and it's considered that there's sufficient mitigation to avoid any significant harm there. There is actually quite limited vegetation. As you can see here, it's just a post and wire fence along this part of the site. But conditions 7 and 8 identify the need for hard and soft landscaping, and it would be necessary to ensure that the appropriate boundary was put in that along that elevation to avoid overlooking in the future. Highway safety was a matter that was of concern. But the existing vehicular access to White Lovington benefits from generous visibility displays. They're sufficient for 40 mile an hour, and actually the speed limit here is 30 mile an hour. There was a request at one point for sort of pedestrian barriers with concerns about children walking to school. But again, that was looked at by the Highways Authority and it wasn't judged to be necessary given the level of traffic that would be associated with this relatively minor scheme. Taking into account accident records, speed limits and visibility displays, it was considered that the existing junction was more than sufficient to facilitate the additional traffic. And so, yeah, and apart from conditions requiring appropriate vehicular access into the site, no changes to the junction are required. An updated ecology report has recently been submitted and reviewed by NET. And since the original surveys, as I said, there has been dormouse identified on the site. The proposed new access will, because it reduces the number of trees, it has the potential to isolate this sort of island of woodland here. So in discussion with Dorset Natural Environment team, it's been agreed that a dormouse bridge will be needed because dormice like to move about in the treetops across this area here, and that's been added as an additional condition 6 to secure those details. The ECIA is quite comprehensive in other respects. It will secure the protection of the existing boundary vegetation and the installation of new planting. And finally, the European habitats, just to confirm that the intention is to secure the temporary HIP by legal agreement, the nutrient credits by condition, and also limit on wholesome water as per the building regs. And then the houses will also be paying for heating contributions through SIL as well. So there's quite a few conditions in the agenda. As I say, I would seek to omit Plan 33 from the plans being the indicative floor plans, which are now secured by floor level, secured by condition 8. And then subject to those conditions and the completion of the legal agreement, the recommendation is to grant, or if the legal agreement can't be completed, then that would be a reason for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Liz. We have one public speaker this item, who's the agent, who is Adam Benning. You know the drill, Adam?
Sure.
You have 3 minutes to start, and Councillor Sally House will keep a tab on it. Thank you.
Good morning. This application seeks permission to develop a site allocated within New Bay Regis neighbourhood plan with a scheme of 17 homes, providing a mix of smaller homes for people getting onto the ladder, smaller family homes, larger family homes, and bungalows, catering for the broad population demographic. The site's within the settlement boundary. The principle is acceptable. The scheme is low density, heavily landscaped. Properties feature large rear gardens, modest front gardens, and incorporate all the existing trees on site and allow for planting in sufficient barriers to be provided to those existing features to keep them all outside of private residential curtilages. There's no future pressure to prune or fell here resulting from the development, and all of these will be maintained as part of a management company approach for the site. This application is made in full, and detailed conversations have been had with officers over the last 5 years this application has been before you. All technical and other related points have been addressed. Officers confirmed that matters of access, drainage, flooding, ecology, trees, landscaping, nutrients, and heathland mitigation are dealt with comprehensively and appropriate conditions proposed. The application, as you've heard, came before Purbeck District Council's committee in April 21. Members voted to grant permission subject to the 106. This application was subsequently delayed due to nutrient neutrality, the updated ecological technical work, and the need to develop further this heathland infrastructure project. Now, this, and through responding to the new adopted Purbeck local plan, its infrastructure contributions, and material changes in various site-specific and national environmental policy and economic changes, have had a significant impact on the viability of this site. The application has been subject to an economic viability assessment now, as you've heard, accounting for all these changed factors. Your case officer has explained in detail why this viability assessment, which has been subject to independent scrutiny from the council's consultant Dixon Searle, is acceptable. All of the inputs have been agreed between the parties, and the summary you've been shown represents the final agreed position. The development can't sustain the delivery of affordable housing on site or off site. It is unfortunate that the scheme can't deliver affordable units as was originally proposed, but this still complies with policy H11 of your local plan, as you've heard. Members will be very well aware of the significant housing need that Dorset Council is expected to meet and the clear need to grant permission on sites which deliver clear public benefit and no harm. The development will see mitigation land in the form of the HIP, secured immediately to the southeast of the site, providing a space for dog walking and general recreation to reduce pressure on the Dorset heathlands. Again, secured by 106 agreement and maintained by a management company, as with the other landscaping. The proposal will deliver these pedestrian improvements also, as you've seen, to White Lovington, creating additional lengths of footway. There is no harm arising here, members. Clear public benefits in the 17 homes with the infrastructure and footway improvements, and we ask that you vote to grant permission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 2 seconds over. Liz, do you have any comments to make on that? Nope. In which case, Councillor Coombs.
Thank you, Chairman. I forgot earlier. Councillor Tony Coombs, Burwood Ward. I'm interested in this HIP because I've just been flicking through the conditions and I can't see anything specifically relating to that. And I'm a little bit concerned that it's a temporary measure, particularly if there are going to be benches, dog bins and a footpath going around it. And the impact on the residents when in however many years' time, because we don't know how many years, they're told, sorry, you're going to lose the open amenity space on your doorstep. And I have to say I'm a little bit concerned about that. I realise Natural England has said it needs to be a stopgap until the main sign is ready. However, it's about the impact on the potential future owners of those properties that I'm concerned about. And is there any way that we can protect the longevity of the use of that space?
Just before you answer, I think my other concern was exactly the same principle, is that the paths that are identified on the site, I presume if it's going to be reverted to agricultural land in a few years, they won't be all weather paths, which might make it difficult to walk around. So they're just mown paths in the middle of winter. It's not going to be very good. So I share the concerns of Councillor Kings about that.
Peter?
Thank you. So in order to provide the HIP, it would be a material change of use of the land, and therefore planning permission will be required for that HIP. So in order to secure that, because it's necessary to make this development acceptable, that's why the legal agreement is required. So the legal agreement will require them to submit the application. We will then need to decide whether that's acceptable, and that will then secure the maintenance as well of that HIP. So because we don't know when or if the suitable alternative natural space will come forward, that will be in perpetuity for 80 years. So that but there will be a provision within that for the developer to come forward with the evidence that that's no longer required, because as you say, it is a stopgap. So I completely understand members' concerns about the impacts on residents. I think it's really important that residents understand and are informed that this is only a temporary measure, that it is intended to, you know, allow them a little bit of extra room to walk their dog until such time as there is the full SANG provided to the north of Bear Regis. Whether that is something that can be included within the legal agreement, that there needs to be, you know, that each new owner is advised of this, that would be a suggestion.
I think that's really, really important. I'll leave it there for now.
Just coming back to your sort of comment, Councillor Took, because it is a temporary HIP rather than a SANG, the requirements will need to be agreed with Natural England because it needs to be effective. But whatever those paths are, we have to anticipate that at the point at which it's no longer required, the likelihood is that it would revert back to agricultural. Yeah, thank you.
Before I move on, I've got Councillor Skeets, Councillor Flower and Councillor Hobbs-Chell. Before I move on, just following up on that point, this is going to be subject to a planning application in the future for that. What happens if that planning application is refused or has conditions that the developer doesn't like on it, such as on weather paths or whatever? What actually happens to this application if we refuse it at a later date?
Thank you. There will be a couple of options open to the developer. So they could obviously appeal any reasons for refusal. They could appeal any conditions that they consider to be unreasonable. They could request a change to the legal agreement if they considered that you know, there was a material change to the environment which meant it's no longer required. That there are various openings for them, or they could put in an alternative application and try and get that approved.
Okay, but my simple point is, if the HIP goes through committee or planning commission and is refused and goes to appeal and is refused, what happens to this planning commission?
3 years. So there is a 3-year commencement requirement on this commission, and the legal agreement would require that HIP to be provided prior to occupation, I think. Can't remember. So yeah, it would impact on this application.
Impact. Okay. Councillor Skeets.
Andy Skeets, West Moors and Three-Legged Cross. I share my colleagues' concern over that area, the temporary area, and the impact it might have later. I haven't got a solution for that, and doesn't sound like anyone else has. But what really I find extremely hard to take is that you can develop an area of housing in low density to a number of 17 and not find any room for affordable housing in the scheme. And I vehemently find that distasteful. And we all know that there may have been a calculation based on today's market, which is probably as bad as you get. And it's quite possible that the developer could land bank this and develop it later and make much more money, which would have sustained affordable housing. So my point is that I find it really hard to support a scheme of that size without any affordable housing. You know, surely there must be some sort of solution to that, because all we're getting is a small contribution that wouldn't probably give us one affordable home, let alone anything else. And I'm unhappy about it. I haven't got a solution, but I'm unhappy about it.
I think those concerns are shared by most of us. The question being, what, if anything, can you do about it? Is this slightly different? But Liz, do you have any comments to make on that?
Viability is a theoretical exercise, but it has to be done in accordance with the criteria set out by government, and that's been undertaken in this case, and we've had it independently verified that it's been done appropriately. So from a planning office perspective, that's it's a policy allowance within the MPPF and local policy that if they can demonstrate viability, then it's policy compliant, notwithstanding that you haven't secured the public gain that we all are looking for.
Okay, and then of course that's government policy again, but government policy also have changed the numbers in our plans for the future. We've had absolutely no chance of redressing, where we're now in a position of less than the target. So that's something, again, we can't necessarily foresee, but we're put in a position where our arms are twisted behind our back because of a policy which we can't attack or negate. And
I think
I'm a bit off the mark, I know, Mr. Chairman, but I'm not happy about it.
everyone's pretty much in agreement with what you're saying. It's whether we could refuse this or depends at appeal. Given the figures, it's I think one of those facts that we seem to have to take into account.
Yeah.
Councillor Flower.
Thank you, Chairman. Following on, following on from Andy Skeet's theme around affordable housing, it is disappointing. I appreciate that national policy directs us in the way we're going with this, but there's a big mantra nationally about local housing for local people. And one of the key ways of dealing with that is affordable housing to rent through the social market, and taking away that opportunity when commercial development comes along, to me, is contrary to that. My question's around the viability, and I've seen the analysis put on a piece of paper, and on the face of it, it looks fine. I just wanted to scrutinise the depth that's going on in auditing these numbers. For example, I appreciate the market's change and material costs have got escalated significantly as a result of the pandemic and all those factors, and the cost of loaning, borrowing money and what have you. What evidence have you got that the land value has been reduced to take account of the changing market? Because one of the ways in which I understand the levers of controlling the viability of a site is to ensure that you discount out the land value, the cost implications of levies that are placed on planning applications. And I just want to be reassured that that depth has been taken into account, and we are looking at a number of 537,225, which is lower than the one that they would have used in the original calculations for the site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Liz.
So the viability is the cost of the land is based on the benchmark land value. So that has been checked by Dixon Searle, and they've agreed that that is an appropriate land value. We don't have a viability. We don't have the original viability that I assume was potentially done by the developer before they put in the original application, because it was policy compliant, so we couldn't require them to provide us with those details. So I don't have that detail, I'm afraid, in terms of what what if any values come off the land. I think because we have to work with the benchmark land value, it's it's not a matter that I can comment on.
Thank you, Liz. One of the things I was hoping we could do at some point is have developers give us a proper valuation to see how the scheme works out, and in advance of all applications, not just when they're trying to reduce affordable housing. But I understand we can't actually insist on that at the moment, because that's not part of our local plan or anything that's in there, which might be a useful thing for us to do. Okay, moving on.
Thank you. I share the concerns around the HIP and things. What's the actual size of that HIP, and what's the viability of returning it this might be a bit of an odd question, especially if it's coming forward for planning matter all of its own. So it might be best to leave that one. But in terms of just the viability of it returning to agriculture afterwards. And you mentioned the dormouse bridges. Are they part of the HIP, or is that condition, because that would give those look like they're on the HIP section? Is that conditioned in perpetuity, if you see what I mean, separate to the HIP? And then has the last question, sorry, is the neighbour of the first proposed dwelling that you mentioned, the 4th bedroom obscure, have they indicated any kind of preference within their comments?
Through you, Chair. Thank you for those three. In terms of the viability, I agree that would be a question. But I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not even sure it would be a valid question when the application comes in, to be honest, because the viability of providing the temporary HIP has been included within this viability because we're looking at affordable housing. But when it comes to the provision of the temporary HIP as a planning application itself, viability won't really be an issue. So I might leave that one there. In terms of the Dormouse Bridge, so that's it's on land in ownership and of the applicant, so it's on the blue line, so we can condition that. Because it's up in the air, it shouldn't affect the ability to use that bit of land as HIP, which is great, but that requirement to maintain that will be in perpetuity, unlike the HIP, so that will stay. The third question was about the neighbours' comments. Unfortunately, on our system, the addresses are not included, so it's hard work for my colleague to find it.
Yeah.
Irrespective of whether or not a neighbour's made representations, if members feel that given their proximity, that an obscure glazed condition would be justified, then you are free, as Liz said earlier, to amend the recommendation to include provision for that. Thank you.
Thank
you. Is that?
Can I just come back quickly on the last point? Thank you. Just to come back on the last point, thank you. Has an assessment of putting that obscure glass in, what's the effect on the light within that bedroom? Is there any, has an assessment been made on that?
Through you, Chair?
Yeah.
It's a secondary window, so, and if it was obscure glazed, you'd still get the light through it. It's just the outlook that gets reduced. So the preference is not to put obscure glazing on any window, because obviously the person who lives there in the future would like the outlook. In this case, officers don't consider it's strictly necessary because of that distance, but it is an option.
Thanks. 10 metres is roughly between me and the desk is up there. It's about 10 metres, I would say, on my rugby pitch when you kick off. Does that answer your question, Hannah?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got. Did you want to say something about the head?
Yes, Chair, please.
Okay. And so I've got you, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. I just, in response to answer was given earlier about in response to concerns about delivery, the HIP and when that would happen. I think Liz said that the trigger was the occupation of the dwellings. I just wanted to advise members that there's a balance to be weighed up there. between the harm occurring that the HIP is sent to mitigate, which would be on occupation, but there is also another planning consideration there about if that were to happen, you could end up with a part-built development that couldn't go ahead. So there is a reasonable position to say that the HIP should be provided before development commences. So it's a matter for you and your judgment, that those are the balances that might need to be weighed up. I didn't want to leave you with the impression that the trigger would be occupation and that was set in stone.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brenton, legit not. Beer Regis is a place I go regularly. I'm quite pleased to see in this application that there is actually mention of bungalows, but White Levington is up, just to call it gently rolling, quite a steep slope, and not desperately accessible for people who are, not very good at walking, for whatever reason. How many of these houses, these bungalows are bungalows, do they have widened doorways? Are they actually, designed for an age-friendly society? And are any of the other properties here? I see that the Beer Regis parish opposes this because it says they're very much semi-detached and detached houses, and that is not what Beer Regis wants, and it's not in keeping with the character of Beer Regis. It may be in keeping with the existing bit of White Levington, but it's not actually what the parish plan or the locals asked for or wanted in their neighbourhood plan. So that's one point. Has consideration been put into whether or not any of these houses are truly accessible? Bearing in mind, it's a fair old walk from there down to the shop, one shop. The other part is, forgetting about the HIP and all that, we do have Wild Woodbury, which is like 100 yards down the road, which is, as the bottom bit is opening as a sound. But my other question is, looking at the footpath map, I haven't actually ever tried to walk from White Levington to the cemetery, but is there a footpath through from there to the cemetery? Because from the cemetery you go round that and then you have access to bridle paths up onto Blackheath and Black Hill. Black Hill, not Blackheath. I can't see any marking, and I've looked on the Wessex Explorer and the Dorset Explorer, and it doesn't show any footpaths. I'm just thinking there's only one access in and out of this site. And if you are walking your dog or hobbling along with a walking stick, it's not the nicest of access. You've got a very steep slope bank down towards the school, so breaking through the trees there isn't exactly fun, and going out the main walk isn't exactly fun. And I just think that these houses weren't designed for the people who might like to buy them. And on that point, were any proposed as first homes, which is a way of selling your houses, but at a slightly reduced price, which would also fit in better with the Beer Regis demands. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Again, yes.
Thank you. In terms of accessibility, none of these are identified particularly as accessible homes. We do have in policy H9 a requirement for a particular proportion of houses to be accessible, but unfortunately that only kicks in when you've got 20 houses or more. So there's no policy requirement at this stage for us to say you have to provide these X as particularly accessible. Part M of the building regs will require accessibility in terms of, it talks about entrances that are level and widths of doors that are acceptable, that kind of thing. So that element of the building regs covers general accessibility. I agree with you, it's a long sort of walk up the hill to get to the end here. There isn't any other access proposed onto Rye Hill, in part because of the topography, as you pointed out, and also because this hedgerow is considered to be significant in terms of its biodiversity value and maintaining that corridor. So the intention of the ecological plan is to buffer that up, to give it give it some additional width and to rather than breaking through. There is just looking at the Dorset Explorer and where the rights of way go. There is a right of way if you turn left out of White Lovington and go into Southbrook, there's the right of way that goes past the primary school and up that way. It is significant distance, and there's another one as you go down the road. You can cross at the crossing, and then there's one to the south. But yeah, at this stage, there's no other public rights of way that come directly from the site. Also, the last bit I think was about first homes.
Yeah.
And there's no designated first homes on here that I'm aware of.
Thanks, Liz. Next,
I'm not satisfied, but yes, I understand the answer. Thank you.
Tony.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened to what's been said about these concerns about the viability, and I'm just wondering if we can request a viability review at 70% build out of this development. We've done it on other applications in the past.
Thank you, Tony. Liz.
This was discussed with the applicant because it has been done in the past, and unfortunately before we came to committee, we received an appeal decision on Morden Mill, which I think was circulated to you, in which the appeal inspector said, as there's no policy that allows you to add a review, it wasn't reasonable, and therefore unfortunately I can't do so.
We went.
My flabber has never been so ghastly, Chairman. Moving on. I think also given the discussion about the HIP, I would like to see it come to committee, please, regardless.
Yeah, the application for the HIP. Okay. You've got anything to no. Look, you'd like to expand on Liz's answer?
Thank you, Chair. It's just to add a bit more to Liz's answer about viability review. Absolutely right about the appeals, about the inspector's decision and their reason for saying that viability review wasn't acceptable. I just thought it might be help members to give a slightly broader view. So that requirement comes from government guidance or policy in the planning practice guidance, which says that where the development plan is silent on viability. Well, it says that viability review provisions should be set. Sorry, start again. That policies in your development plan should say the circumstances in which viability reviews will be required. And in the appeal decision that was referred to, the inspector found there wasn't such a policy, and therefore PPG should be followed. PPG is a material consideration, so it can be outweighed by the material considerations if you come up with them. The position that the inspector came to is obviously a strong indication of where the government or that inspector may have been. But if there are other material considerations you think that might outweigh that government's policy, then that's open to you to find those and make that decision.
Thank you. Do we have any more Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Chair. Scott Florrick, Corfmullen. Just another observation about garages. I see some of these properties have carports, but the other properties, are there no carports, no garages, no storage facilities either?
Sheds. Yeah. So only certain only the largest properties I think here have those outbuildings. Under permitted development rights, people will be able to add sheds if they want them. Yeah.
Any more questions or contributions, thoughts? Okay, you want to clarify something, Liz?
Thank you, Chair. So I've just found the draft legal agreement that obviously hasn't been finalised yet, but at the moment to confirm that we're requesting the submission of a planning application to the council for the creation of the HIP prior to the construction of any dwellings above ground level until such time as the planning permission has been granted by the council. So it is a pre-commencement of the dwellings trigger at present in the draft legal agreement. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that. Any Councillor Chell?
Thank you. Just on that basis, is there anything that members need to do if we wanted to ensure that happened, or is that effectively going to happen now with that draft legal agreement, or do we need to, if we wanted to see that happen, do we need to put a condition on it at this point? I'll come back.
Through you, Chair. So no, the legal agreement is got to be signed, sealed before any permissions given, and the permission will link to that legal agreement. So that will secure the provision of the HIP and the requirement to apply for planning permission, and then then thereafter to provide the HIP.
So,
just one last one point, sorry, confused, but the viability assessment gives the build costs, but am I right in thinking there are no the materials are yet to be decided? Can I just have some understanding on how those build costs have been established when the materials haven't been?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, thank you. The build costs are based on the BCIS figures, which are build cost information. So they are kind of standardized costs that you use in a viability report. As I say, because it's a theoretical sort of theoretical picture that's given. So within that, they would have the flexibility to then choose what they choose to use.
Yeah. Yeah. And Duncan.
Looking at that one works. Need to put another 10p in that one. Yeah, just some comments, really, and maybe Liz can help me if I'm wrong. So some of them are just comments and others are kind of questions. With regards to viability, and I hear, and I did actually ask a question before. I think what committee is struggling with is the number of homes. We're seeing fewer homes developed elsewhere, and affordability is a real, and this isn't. And yet this is described as low density, and yet it's higher density than the homes that are already there at White Lovington. So is it, if both things can be true, is it a fact that actually if different homes were built here, viability could be possible? And if that is the case, then actually is it not the option for any developer that doesn't want to offer affordability within a development that they simply build to a scale and quality that makes that unviable? So is that not really a choice, or am I seeing that through a lens of simplicity? I would want to see the HIP completed pre-commencement condition, I don't think this development is in keeping with White Lovington and the history of that area. So just to give members an idea, that site contained one home. White Lovington was the name of the home that Lady Llewellyn moved into after she gifted Upton House to the Borough of Poole. That she died, the house was sold, demolished, and White Lovington was built. This is an extension to that. So it's always been a very open space, and I feel that I agree with the parish council. I think this is overdevelopment of that site and not in keeping with that area. To just speak to the accessibility, there are no footpaths to Black Hill. There may be, I understand what Liz was saying with regards to rights of way, but there are no footpaths. You come out of White Lovington, you turn left, and to get to the cemetery or Black Hill, you would have to go up through Egdon Close, and there are no pavements there at all. So those are my comments. Question: viability is in fact the wrong homes.
Thank you, Duncan. Liz.
Thank you. So in order to be acceptable, the developer has to accord with the planning policies. Now, the planning policy, so the neighbourhood planning policy says we want this site to be developed. You can't develop within the 400 metres, so you can only develop in those two spaces at the north and the south, which means that you have to put in this great big road. So whatever type of houses you put in, you've still got the issues of the build costs associated with the infrastructure. Then you've got the need for a variety of homes and the request, the strategic housing market assessment saying we want smaller homes, ideally, please. You're trying to balance the, White Lovington is very low density at the moment. I would say that this remains low density. It's just that White Lovington is very low density. And actually, when it comes to character, because the way that White Lovington is cited, the application housing is going to make it's not really going to be visible until you get right into White Lovington, and then you will see these 3 extra houses on the end. And then the other houses, because they are down this long track and set behind these White Lovington houses, they will only really be glimpsed in views coming down Rye Hill. And because they're on slightly higher land, and because they're set back and you've got the hedgerow, I struggle as an officer to be able to say that would cause harm to the character of the area. In terms of usually bigger houses you get more value, but obviously the more houses you get more value. So it's I can't say, that an alternative scheme wouldn't have slightly better viability, but that then potentially wouldn't meet the requirements for low density and or these other requirements that we have, including the requirement to make efficient use of the land that is available. And this is in the settlement, so we should be developing it. And we want efficient use of land, but we also want to keep the low density. So there are a lot of tensions, aren't there? And then the only other thing to say, I think, is in terms of the HIP and pre-commencement, at the moment, the requirement is that they have planning permission pre-commencement, and it's all set out and available pre-occupation, because the occupation is the point at which it's going to cause, you want to mitigate the harm. Pre-occupation, there's no harm, but obviously you need to have it all secured and definitely ready. And you want to know you've got planning permission for that HIP before they build the houses. Otherwise, like Phil said, you've got the risk of houses with no mitigation. So I hope that explains why at the moment we've got those 2 triggers. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much for that. I understand that, Liz. I'm not going to say that's an answer. It is obviously the answer. But I wonder, I hear what you say about effectively suck it up, out of sight, out of mind. I'm paraphrasing. But that doesn't take into account the impact of that additional greater density housing on those homes that are already there. With regards to the pre-commencement, I may have misunderstood our learned friend here, but he suggested that actually requesting completion of the HIP pre-commencement was reasonable and within members' reserve to ask. Did I misunderstand that?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Yeah, it is within members' reserve to ask. I think from we're looking at trying to be balanced, ensuring that the development commences within the 3 years, and ensuring that we get the HIP in time as well. So we don't want to have to rush through the application for the HIP. We need to make sure that that's got time to be considered properly, and that is in place before development commences. That would then potentially cause if mitigation wasn't available. Thank you.
Yeah, so if I can just come back on that. So the HIP ought not to be too complex to resolve, I would have thought. It's temporary, it's mown paths. Is it possible to, actually, I don't know whether I can go back. Maybe you can go back to the viability screen quicker than me. So I didn't take the number. No, I was already on a different screen. Yeah. So I would say that there are about 1,426,775 reasons why they would actually want to get that temporary HIP sorted to be able to start commencement. But maybe I've misunderstood that.
Probably not. Yes.
If members, so if members want the legal agreement to change, just need to tell me what the triggers are that you need. Yeah, please.
I think if we're so I'm minded to make a proposal that we accept the application as it is, but with a condition that the HIP is completed pre-commencement of the development.
Sorry, I was. So you can see the cogs turning in my brain. I was trying to check that. I was just thinking through whether there's any conditions that we need to discharge before the HIP work takes place in order to ensure that. I think that could then, if the HIP work would then, because it's subject to a separate planning application, it'd be subject to separate conditions. So I thank you for giving me the time there to think that through.
Thank you. Just to hopefully clarify Councillor House's proposal, it wouldn't be a condition that you'd impose on the planning permission about well, it could be a condition. You could have a no development condition until, or you could leave it for the section 106 and change the trigger in the section 106 obligation. Sorry, but Liz.
Sorry, just to come back. So in order to get access to that HIP, in order to build it, they're going to have to create the access. That is the issue. That's coming back. Okay, so they've got to create the access. As soon as they create the access, they have in effect commenced this permission.
Yeah.
So, and we would need them to have undertaken all the pre-commencement on this before they commence work on the access, because we want the dormouse bridge in position and extra bits and pieces, which is why I think it was worded in the way it is. I remember now. So the intention then would be that the access could be created, because then you can get access to the HIP to create the HIP, but no housing development can take place. So maybe the wording should be no works to the houses hereby permitted. prior to the provision of the HIP. Because then that allows them to provide the infrastructure to.
Which they have.
Okay. Thank you. So
Yeah.
it would be pre-commencement of dwellings.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll second that, Chairman.
Proposed, seconded.
I was going to second you, that's fine, I'm not bothered.
So you're happy with the wording of this?
That's, yeah.
Can
So if
we
I just
read
go
it
back
out?
to the, so the recommendation is to grant subject to the conditions on this slide. So we're just submitting that indicative levels plan and subject to a section 106 agreement, which will secure the provision of the HIP prior to the commencement of works to construct the dwellings.
Yes. Okay. And Tony. Okay. Does anybody else have a thought or a comment or a question? And which? Oh,
Can I just come in with a comment? This has been proposed. I'll be voting against because I believe they're the wrong houses for this site.
Any further? No. In that case, all of those in favour of the proposal, which is to grant permission subject, as per the recommendation, subject to the additional wording regarding the section 106 agreement, that construction of the houses shouldn't start until the HIP is available. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so all those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, is that right, Josh?
Yeah. Agree.
All those against? 1. And any abstentions? 2. All right, Josh? Okay, which means that it is approved. Permission is granted, subject to the additional condition as mentioned. We have 3 more items to look at. One which I'm hoping is two other ones. But what I think we can do now is take a short comfort break, 2 hours, come back and hopefully see how far we get with these before 1. And then we might take a decision as to whether to continue or to break for lunch. Is that okay? Yeah. Without stop, yeah.
Who's here in the afternoon?
Chairman, I can only stay till 2.
Okay. Right. Right. Let's take
up towards Langton House itself. Photograph 3 is from the location of the proposed shepherd's huts, looking back towards Langton House, and then photograph 4 is looking down towards the location of the shepherd's huts, which would be along the tree line in the background. This building here is a swimming pool for the existing provision. Langton House is located to the south of the dwellings on Spyway Orchard, which is a rural exception site recently developed to the south of the village. The site is accessed by a private drive which extends southwards from Durnford Drove. Agricultural fields adjoin the grounds to the east, west and south, and the site and then those fields are crossed by a number of public rights of way. There's a group tree preservation order which covers the entire grounds of Langton House and Spyway Orchard to the north. The site is located within the National Landscape and within the Purbeck Heritage Coast. The site is within the countryside and therefore policy V1 of the Purbeck Local Plan is relevant, but it is silent in respect of holiday accommodation. However, policy EE4 supporting attractive tourism is relevant. The policy supports opportunities to enhance the visitor economy, where tourist accommodation proposals are of scale, type and appearance that is appropriate to the locality, and to provide local economic benefits. In respect of tourism development in the countryside, policy EE4 permits new development that is closely related to existing buildings and caravan sites, and the proposal is considered to fall within these criteria. A number of other criteria must also be met, as set out in paragraph 14.5 of the report, and the proposal is judged to comply with those. The first element of the proposal is erection of 2 3-bedroom holiday cottages on part of the existing car park to the north of the a car park to the north of an existing holiday unit. This application follows the expiry of a previous planning permission reference P full 2021-04153, 4513, which was granted in 2022, which was for the demolition of that existing unit and the construction of 4 holiday cottages with associated parking in the same location as now proposed. The photos on the screen show the site of the holiday cottages from the access drive and from the grounds to the southeast, showing how the site is screened by the existing protected trees. This photograph shows the existing holiday unit to be retained and an area of car park to the north which would be developed. The photos demonstrate that the site is well screened by existing trees, vegetation and the boundary wall along Durnford Road, which is behind this line of cars. The proposed alterations to the parking layout to accommodate the development, together with the additional soft landscaping, will also serve to soften the impact of the dwellings within the wider setting, and a hard and soft landscaping scheme has been submitted with the application and can be secured by condition, which is condition 9. The proposed layout is of 2-storey traditional layout for the holiday cottages with open plan living accommodation on the ground and a bedroom on the ground floor level, and then 2 further bedrooms at the first floor level. The design of the holiday cottages is of traditional character that respects the local vernacular of the village in terms of height, design detail and use of local materials, with natural slate roofs, use of Purbeck stone on the main frontage elevations and render to the side elevations. There is the remaining elevations on plan, and the sample panel of proposed Purbeck stone walling can be secured by condition, which is condition 8. The second element of this scheme is the siting of 2 shepherd's huts within the northeast corner of the grounds. Due to the limited scale of the huts and their siting on lower land and the provision of an associated planting scheme with them, the huts are not expected to be particularly conspicuous within this more open location. The traditional design for the shepherd's huts is proposed, and the Dorset National Landscape team has advised the use of natural timber and recessive coloured roofing of a matte black or brown finish, and the exclusion of brighter colours for the windows and doors of those huts, just to ensure that they sit appropriately in the landscape. A condition is therefore proposed to control the external appearance of the units, and is recommended to provide specific details of the materials or colours, which is condition 7. In addition, there's a condition proposed requiring details of any external lighting to ensure that artificial light intrusion is limited, given the dark night skies of the national landscape. The proposals are judged to conserve and further the purposes of the national landscape designation and are considered to be acceptable in terms of design and landscape impacts in accordance with policies E1 landscape and E12 design of the Purbeck Local Plan. The application is supported by a landscaping plan, tree protection details, and a Dorset Natural Environment Team approved ecological impact assessment, and implementation of all of those can be secured by condition, which is conditions 5, 6, and 15 in the report. There would be biodiversity net gain on the scheme of 18.3%, which is to be delivered on site, which would be secured through the deemed condition on any future planning consent, and informative notes on the decision. An appropriate assessment has been prepared, which concludes that any harms to the Dorset Heaths SAC and Dorset Heathlands SPA will be avoided by way of securing the payment of a SAM contribution for the sui generis holiday accommodation, which comes to £664.80, and the payment can be secured through a unilateral undertaking between the government and Dorset Council prior to the issue of a planning decision. The proposed layout plan indicates provision of 21 car parking spaces, and those will be provided to the north and northeast of the new holiday lets, in the locations just being indicated. That's 16 replacement spaces and 5 new spaces. Given the level of parking provision within the wider site and the provision of 5 additional spaces to serve the new proposal, the level of provision is judged to be acceptable. The highways engineer has raised no objections subject to conditions, securing turning and parking, and construction for first use, and the provision of a cycle parking scheme to encourage use of active travel. Just to note, before we get into the detail on this slide, that this clip is made up of a composite of 2 planning application drawings. So the officer's done their best to line them up as best as possible, but there may be a slight inaccuracy there, but it's intended to be illustrative at this stage. But concerns have been raised by the parish council, ward member and local residents about increased flood risk to the local area. In particular, properties on the Hyde from surface water runoff associated with the development. That's the Hyde is up to the northeast of the site. Following site investigations, which included infiltration testing, a drainage scheme was submitted and amended through the application process with full consultation undertaken on each amendment. The scheme proposes rain gardens on the downpipes to the holiday cottages. Sorry, that was my place. And then discharge of the surface water to a soakaway located in the grounds. It's the blue rectangle on the plan. And then there are arrows on the plan showing exceedance flow routes if the capacity of the soakaway were to be exceeded, and that would water would travel towards the northeast. Given that those exceedance routes, a shallow swale is proposed to the northeastern boundary of the site, which that is to provide water storage and filter surface runoff to an existing pond. The drainage engineer has advised that the scheme is acceptable and proportionate in scale to the nature of the proposed development, and condition 3 on the proposed conditions would secure the full implementation of that scheme. Notwithstanding this, the council has requested that a condition is included on any approval, allowing for the swale to be widened and made deeper so that it could be readily expanded if it proves to be inadequate to its task, with a further condition enabling the swale to be increased in size should water runoff from the site contribute in any way to flooding to the north and east of the site. Whilst officers acknowledge the reasons for the requested conditions, it is considered that the imposition of such conditions on the decision would be unreasonable, unnecessary, and unenforceable. However, should the applicants consider it necessary to increase the size of the swale at a future date, that could be dealt with by a planning application. The use of the planning unit of Langton House has, as a whole, i.e. the private holiday complex, forms a sui generis use. As such, the holiday cottage do not provide C3 dwelling house accommodation towards the housing land supply, and policies H11 for affordable housing and H14 second homes of the Purbeck local plan do not apply. To ensure that the cottages and shepherd's huts remain tied to the wider estate and cannot be marketed for sale as independent dwellings under use class C3, a condition is proposed, which is condition 16, which would require that the cottages are only used as holiday accommodation and may not be used as a person's sole or place of residence. In addition, the sui generis use of the holiday accommodation has been clarified by way of an amendment of the description, which has been agreed by the planning agent during the application process. Impacts on neighbouring amenity are judged to be acceptable, subject to conditions securing obscure glazing in the Unit 1 holiday let, which is a secondary bathroom and a lounge facing the existing holiday cottage, and obscure glazing of the bathroom windows serving the shepherd's huts. No details of foul drainage are provided, and a pre-commencement condition on the decision is recommended to ensure that an acceptable scheme can be implemented, particularly for the shepherd's huts. Finally, the council's building control team have provided comments in respect of fire brigade compliance, and they've commented that the submitted plans appear to comply with section B5 requirements of the building regulations, but nevertheless an informative will be included to remind the applicant of the need to meet building regulation requirements on the site. In summary, the proposal is considered to be acceptable, and there's a summary of all of the issues considered on the screen, and the officer recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to the conditions as set out in section 17 of your committee report, and the completion of a legal agreement to secure the payment of the SAM mitigation. An alternative recommendation B is provided should the section 106 legal agreement not be completed within 6 months of the committee decision. It's the presentation, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have one public speaker on this, who's the agent, who is Charles Moore. Thank you, Steve. You've been here before, so you now press the buttons.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicants, the Holiday Property Bond in support of the application. By way of context, HPB, the Holiday Property Bond, is a member-owned and shareholder cooperative, and they currently own in excess of 1,500 properties across Europe and the UK. They provide holiday accommodation, not private residential properties. As you've heard, the application seeks permission to erect 2 cottages and site 2 shepherd's huts at Langton House. This additional accommodation will add to the existing holiday accommodation offered at the property. The applicant sought pre-application advice from the council prior to submitting the application, and the advice from officers shaped the application, which is before you this afternoon. The applicants will, of course, please see the application recommended for approval and hope you're able to support this recommendation. As detailed in the committee report, no objections have been raised in relation to agricultural matters, ecology or highways, and importantly, drainage matters have been resolved. The Dorset National Landscape Team have commented that due to the limited scale and provision of associated planting, the units are not expected to be particularly conspicuous in the wider landscape setting. Proposed new units will be discreetly located, as you see on the plans, to the north of the existing 2-storey building in a semi-detached arrangement, set back from the stone wall that extends down the western boundary of the site. In terms of proposed materials, there will be the walls will be Purbeck, rubble stone, and rendered to contribute and reflect the existing character of the area. An important consideration is the economic benefits that will be delivered through this proposal. The proposal will provide additional footfall for future occupants who will support the local economy with their expenditure. Proposed residential units, proposed holiday units, provide modern, fit-for-purpose family accommodation for holiday use. In terms of the wider economy, this will ensure the long-term success of the rural business and the facilities are not seasonal and will provide year-round additional employment opportunities. The application is accompanied by a detailed surface drainage management report, and this was informed by trial pits and infiltration testing. The surface water strategy details how surface water runoff will be managed to ensure there's no impact on neighbouring properties. And as you've heard, the council's drainage engineers confirmed that the surface water management plan is sufficient and proportionate to the nature and scale of the proposal to deal with flood risk and to ensure that there be no flood risk decreased across the site or indeed to neighbouring properties. I hope you're able to support the application and approve the schemes before you this afternoon. Thank you.
Nothing to yeah, we have a statement from a ward member, Ben Wilson, and it's read out by
the next one, I think.
Vice Chairman.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's next one.
Women's Cross, yeah.
Yeah, says that. Okay, was there any questions? Councillor Benton, comments?
Let Andy Keats start. I always go on.
Were you first?
I don't think I was first, but you're
Go for it.
quite happy?
I
Okay.
pointed out between the two of you.
Okay. Councillor Andy Skeets, Westmoors and Three-Legged Cross. I was when I read the notes and the paperwork through this, there was a potential flood risk in part of the area on the site of 1 in 100 years, which was somewhere was stated had happened twice in the last year, which seems a bit of a contradiction. So I don't know the site, so I've no idea whether that is a valid argument or it isn't. But if something does flood more than is expected and over the terms of what it's designated, how does that get changed and what relevance should we give it to the planning application? I don't really quite know what. I understand people reporting it and local people tend to know the sites, so they know when it floods and they, generally most people are quite reasonable. How does that process work? Should we take it into account and should it be changed?
Thank you, Andy. I don't think it's within our power to change it. I assume that believe that these things are organised nationally with standard details.
Never assume anything, Mr. Chairman, but yes, exactly.
Sorry, if I could just through your chair. Yeah, I think Jay, you said correctly that we have national flood risk modelling that's provided by the Environment Agency. That then is expanded upon in the council's strategic flood risk assessment, which is a more detailed piece of work which informs the local plan preparation. But part of the reason that we consult on planning applications is to get people's local knowledge on of things that might not be shown up by the technical modelling and things and people's experience on the ground, and those comments and concerns have been recognised in this case, and that's fed into the additional and the quite detailed drainage design work that has been done in this instance.
Okay.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Now, Councillor Benton.
I'll follow on from Councillor Skeets's thing about water. I know this site fairly well, a bit, and there is a natural slope which takes extreme rainwater, basically surface water runoff, down to that northeastern corner, which is, I assume, why it's proposed shepherd's huts, which I assume are off the ground. So rainwater can flow under them. But what interests me is yes, that's fine. They can have a moat around them at times, perhaps. I suspect they won't be used when there is. But obviously, they do appear to have bathrooms So therefore that is foul drainage, which you can't see how the facilities get into the ground and go off down to the mains. But I'm assuming, looking at the screen 15, could you, I can't get it big enough to be able to read, but is the sort of slightly orangey straight line from the caravan or from the huts, whatever called, to join the other line and then go down into the, is that the foul drainage line or is that something else and I'm reading it wrong? I'm not so bothered about the blue line, I assume that's the surface water, but the sort of orangey line, I can't read the writing, so.
Thank you. We have just looked up the plan, and that is annotated on the plan as being a foul water rising main. That orange line. The precise details of foul drainage from those shepherd's huts is going to be subject to a planning condition.
Okay, I was just sort of thinking, well, it's very straight, so it just seemed a bit. It could be the foul drainage. Okay, that was just a bit of a puzzle to me because when you see these screens and the writing is so minuscule that even with my best strong glasses, I can't read it. I get a bit sort of, it would be nice to have more information. There has been problems in the past, I know, with the rural exception side, the other side, and they have dealt with this quite well. So on the whole, I'm quite accepting of this application. And if nobody else has got any terrible comments, I'd actually might propose it in future.
Thank you. Might propose it in future.
Well, I'll let other people talk first, let me say.
Okay.
Told you can't.
Councillor Combs.
Thank you, Chairman. Tony Coombs, Verwood Ward. As Alex has picked up on the drainage, I was looking at that before earlier, and sort of just a few sort of things started to trickle through. So if we've got permanent drainage links to shepherd's huts, which are supposed to be temporary buildings, is that a precursor to the ability to put in a more permanent building in that location in the future? So that's question one. And the second question is, looking at the detail of those huts, it's not 2 shepherd's huts, it's 4, even though they, in pairs, they are permanently linked to create a bigger space. So again, is that a precedent so that in the future, perhaps that split can be remade and they could have 4 individual shepherd's huts on the site? How do we constrain the use of that sort of temporary holiday accommodation as to what it's hopefully intended to be, rather than it being a precursor to something perhaps that would be more unacceptable?
Indeed, and perhaps static caravans rather than shepherd's huts in the future. Who knows? Thomas.
Thank you, through you. So the question of whether the shepherd's huts are or maybe a precursor to future development, the proposal before us today is for shepherd's huts, and we can't presume or suggest that it might be a precursor to something else if the applicant wished to come forward for something more permanent in the future. Then they would have to make a planning application to do so, and that application would have to be considered on its own merits. But the assessment of the shepherd's huts as been proposed is that they are acceptable in terms of their impact, and in terms of the size and nature of the shepherd's huts being 2, effectively shepherd's huts are caravans in the legal sense, in the sense that they are designed or adapted for human habitation and are capable of being moved, and legislation under the Caravans Act allows for twin unit caravans, which is brought onto site in two pieces and joined together on site. So in that sense, they still fulfil that definition. But seeing the potential of where that could lead, we do have a condition on the recommendation, which is that the appearance of the shepherd's hut shall be as shown on the submitted drawings. So the shepherd's huts would still need to look like what is shown on screen. So it wouldn't be possible. There would be a breach of that condition if they were to come and put in a more generic twin unit caravan, for example.
So that condition would stop. If you have a park home, that's often brought on a low load and get a couple of sections and they're put together on site. So that condition could prevent something like that happening.
Yes.
Okay.
I suppose my concern is that we need to ensure that if this is supposed to be for two caravans, or sorry, two shepherd's huts, we do have 4 units that are quite capable of being separated in the future. And as long as the wording stipulates that they are maintained as 2 discrete units rather than 4, I'll be minded to support it.
Is that covered in that condition?
Sorry, through Chair. So there are a couple of things. The description of development stipulates 2 shepherd's huts. So splitting these into 4 shepherd's huts would then be a material change of use, which would itself require planning consent. And also the condition, while it doesn't stipulate no more than 2 shepherd's huts, because that comes through the description of development, it does have the stipulation that the appearance is as shown on the approved plans. So if they were to be broken into 2 and used separately in a different way, they'd need more doors, they'd need to site them in a different position, and that would then variation of that condition.
Okay, that gets rid of the ambiguity that I was concerned about.
Okay, thank you. I've got Duncan and then Councillor Skips.
Thank you, Councillor Surreyhouse, Caution Island. I also know this location quite well, and I think this holiday accommodation does fit very well within this existing site. It does help the rural economy. I appreciate the year-round employment opportunities that this will give, and I'm content with the clarifications and conditions that are being spoken about. I would be minded to support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Skips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Skeets, Westmoors and Three-Legged Cross. I think my comment's sort of a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but if you think of a shepherd's hut and the uses of a shepherd's hut, it would have been dragged from one place to another. It would have been taken from field to field. It would either have been pulled by a horse or a tractor or human beings. And none of those things apply to that shepherd's hut I could see there, because you'd have trouble moving it in one hit, wouldn't you? So should we not be mindful of that as we move forward and seek to clarify a little bit more on control of what a shepherd's hut is for the future? I'm not suggesting we try and stop this application, but I think we should do that, because the next application will have 4 together and that will be called 1. And there's nothing from what you've just said that would stop that, and you couldn't drag that down a motorway. So I do think there should be some control, but in essence, they're lovely things to rent in the countryside, aren't they? I'm not against that at all.
Thanks, Andy. Tell us some definition of a shepherd's hut.
Yeah,
It's a shepherd.
I think shepherd's hut is effectively a style of caravan.
Exactly.
That's how I would
Yes.
characterise it. Unless it's on skid. But it's ultimately, it fulfills the statutory definition of a caravan, which is a structure which is designed or adapted for human habitation, and you mentioned about the potential for it to get bigger and go to 4, that type of thing. That would be controlled through the Caravans Act, which sets a definition of a twin unit caravan, which is it's got physical size dimensions, which are set out in legislation. So you wouldn't be able to go any larger than those physical dimensions. And again, it would require planning permission if you did.
But you could add them behind, couldn't you? So you could have 4 together that still you could still group 4 together and being included under that term of a double mobile home for sure.
No, sorry. If I may check, I don't believe you could, Councillor, because I believe I'm right in saying that the Caravan Sites Act specifies 2 parts, so that a twin unit caravan is brought onto site in no more than 2 parts, and they're joined together. It's not an act of construction of multiple parts that are brought onto the site.
Thank you. So,
Thank you, Chair. Couple of points to expand on what Tom has said. Elaborating on what the description of developments as sites to Shepherd's Huts, I think that would be a question of fact and degree if another application came in as to whether that was a change of use or a material change of use. And I know that sounds like semantics, but a change of use doesn't need planning permission. A material change of use does need planning permission. So I think that would be a question of fact and degree, and therefore subject to fulfilling the tests, which I hadn't thought about. It may be possible, and you may need advice from planning colleagues about whether it would meet the test. It may be possible to impose an additional condition restricting the number of Shepherd's Huts on site to that described in the application. Second point, just for clarification for twin units, it's not a requirement that the 2 halves are brought onto site as complete halves and then joined together on site. It's a requirement that the last act of construction is to join 2 halves together. So you can have situations where the 2 halves are constructed on site and the last act is to join them together. I just wanted to make that clear so members aren't in any doubt over that. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got one question, if I may, my own, which is to do with condition 16, which says the holiday accommodation hereby approved shall be occupied for holiday purposes only, fine, as part of their private holiday complex, fine, and shall not be occupied as a person's sole or main place of residence. What if, hypothetically, this main holiday accommodation was sold, someone wanted to use it as a second home, which would be affected by the permanent local plan, because second homes are covered in that. So it's not going to be someone's main residence, it's going to be occupied as a holiday because it's a second home. How would that work? How can you?
Thank you, Chair. So the condition specifies that the holiday accommodation is occupied as part of the private holiday complex as Langton House. So that would prevent the severance, and it requires that they remain part of that complex as a whole. And I'm just
So if somebody wanted to buy the place, use it as a second home, as a holiday home for themselves, they wouldn't be able to, without some agreement with Langton House, or regardless. I just. Okay.
yeah. I think it's I think that the ownership of the cottages. Sorry. No. I think sorry.
Could we simply change the wording of the condition if it's thought necessary to say it shall not be occupied as a person's sole or main place or secondary place of residence?
Yes.
That's what I think the combination is.
I think we'd have difficulty defining what a secondary place of residence would be, because that's ultimately the purpose of holiday accommodation.
Second home, then perhaps. I mean, second homes are defined in the perfect local plan, they're not.
That's the same.
What was it? Yes, please.
Yeah, if I may check. So as Councillor Sarryhouse has pointed out, both paragraph 14.49 of the report, it confirms that the second homes policy doesn't apply to holiday accommodation, which is what is proposed.
I get that.
I
understand that.
Okay.
I understand that perfectly. The point is, if it was sold to somebody else who wanted to use it as a second home, it would no longer be subject to that exclusion.
Wouldn't be part of the contract.
But I think what it would need in that situation is an assessment of fact and degree as to whether a material change of use had occurred to make it a dwelling house within use class C3, rather than holiday accommodation within the wider sort of generous use.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand why it's a problem, but
Move on.
okay, Tony.
Got the microphone there as well.
Legal.
Microphone. I think, am I missing something? Because the condition actually says that it's been approved for holiday purpose only as part of the private holiday complex. So if it's part of the holiday complex, it can't be sold off as a separate unit anyway. So or am I missing something?
I'm not sure. That's what I'm trying to get at, because if it's within that site, is that part of the holiday complex? And it says to be used as holiday accommodation only, or to be used as holiday accommodation only within. Where's the comma?
Yeah, there is no comma.
There is no comma.
The actual wording of the condition is the holiday accommodation hereby approved shall be occupied for holiday purposes only as part of the private holiday complex at Langton House.
That's absolutely fine.
So it's not separate. It requires it as to be remain part of it.
All right. If you're all convinced, that's probably that. I'll leave it there. Do we have any further questions? Any thoughts? Any proposals? Councillor Bretton.
Despite our reservations about holiday homes, not such, this, if it is Shepherd's Hut, my only query is that the officer said that a Shepherd's Hut was just a style of caravan.
It is.
And that's the only bit that freaks me out, because then what's to say you could just remove that and put a caravan there? But is it a style or is it a distinct class of thing? But I remain to be reassured on that, but I actually propose that we accept this because the application as it is okay.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Yeah, if I can just come back just to try and clarify the point on shepherd's huts versus caravans. So caravans are defined in legislation. There is a Caravan Sites Act which defines what a caravan is, and that is any structure that is designed or adapted for human habitation that is capable of being moved from one place to another. So it's silent on shepherd's huts. It doesn't talk about shepherd's huts. It doesn't talk about touring caravans. It just says that is what a caravan is, and it's our assessment that the shepherd's huts, as shown on the plans, fulfil that statutory definition. But again, we go back to their appearance, because of that, the way the Caravan Sites Act operates, that caravans are by definition not buildings, and therefore are chattels, that we have the condition 18, which secures their appearance to be as shown.
Yeah.
So if I can just ask the officer, so I've just as you do, look to the stage of Google. Would these fall under the same legislation as a static caravan, which is designed as a structure adapted for human habitation that's capable of being moved, but not designed for towing on public roads? Is that what we're looking at with a shepherd's hut? Yes. Yes. Lovely. Thank you. Well, then I'm straightforward.
This answer is no.
Did we have a proposal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay. Are there any further comments? No. So we've got a proposal to accept as per officer's recommendation, which is to delegate authority to service manager to grant planning subject to the completion of a legal agreement under section 106 to secure the financial contribution of 66480 towards SAM and HIP. I think I might be on the wrong page.
That's good.
I think I might be on the wrong page.
Is it what's on screen?
To delegate this there, yes. To delegate authority to the service manager for the development manager. Issue the planning commission. Yeah. Secure SAM as mitigation.
No.
Strategic access management and monitoring contribution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's SAM.
Oh, that's a sound.
Sam, not sang.
That's not SAM, that was SAM. Or to refuse permission with the list of set out in section 2. If the section 106 is not completed. So all those in favour, they show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's unanimous, I think. And therefore, People 2024-0696 orders granted, subject to their, as per the recommendation. Right. Thank you. We've got 2 more to do. Very nearly 1, it's 3 minutes to 1. But I think we can probably get these 2 done rather than break for lunch and come back.
Keep going.
Keep
going.
Anyone disagree with that?
Roll. You're on a roll, Chairman. Keep going.
I'm all right. Okay.
What's his lunch?
Still something delivery for lunch coming.
Right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda in that case.
Chairman, point of order. We need permission to go beyond 1 o'clock.
We've got 3 minutes to take the vote. What I was about to say was we'll move on to the next item on the agenda after we've voted. After we've voted whether or not to extend the time. All those in favour of extending the time? Yes, please. Are you okay with that, Hannah?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, that's unanimous. Right, so we will now move on to the next item, which is a variation of the conditions. The VOC 2025-05153, Moonhouse, Valley Road, Harmons Cross, Swanage, which will be presented by Liz Adams. We then have 2 public speakers and a statement for that. So, Liz.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is retrospective. It's originally has development has taken place other than in accordance with the approved plans that were granted in 2023 and then subsequently amended by a non-material amendment application. The site lies in Harmons Cross, which is to the west of Swanage, and the site location gets set back from the highway and extends down to the southern boundary of the settlement, as shown there. The whole area lies within the Dorset National Landscape, and the southern part of the site is subject to a tree preservation order. So, as this is a variation of condition application, only the effect of the changes proposed are being considered. The principle of development, the impact on protected trees, and impact on biodiversity are not affected by the proposals and are considered to be acceptable. So, further consideration isn't required. So, the main concerns here are whether the amendments are acceptable in relation to the character and appearance of the area, the impact on Dorset National Landscape, and neighbouring amenity. So hopefully these are not too complicated. The one at the top is what was originally approved. The one in the middle is the non-material amendment that was approved, and the one before you is at the bottom here. So you'll see the dormer here has increased in width by about 48 centimetres. There's been a reduction in its height by about 17 centimetres, but the addition of overhangs to the sides and top. Then there's the porch, which is approximately 17 centimetres wider and approximately 27 centimetres taller, with alternative fenestration that you can see there. And in addition to the urban overhang to the south side and top. Then you've got this gable, which was shown previously to be clad, which is no longer clad. And then you've got the dormer up here, which is serving bedroom 1, and it's approximately ½ a metre higher than was previously approved, and the dormer window now exceeds the ridge height by approximately 0.6 metres, where it extends out at this level here, and it's got overhangs to the side and top. So then the rear, or let's say east elevation, it is the rear, has another dormer on the other side, which has also got the same height increase. And then you see the sides, which have also changed. And then this, you can see here the increased height of the dormers on either side. So objections have been received from a ward member, from a parish council and a neighbour to the east of the application site, noting that the alterations to the property, particularly the bedroom 1 dormer window, are visually intrusive, detracting from the aesthetic character of the area and having a negative impact on visual landscape character of the Dorset National Landscape. The dormer windows permitted by the original house order consent and the subsequent NMA were set just below or on at ridge level of the parent bungalow. And as such, they retained an element of subservience and a more harmonious relationship with the property, despite the modern design and the overhangs and the contemporary black cladding, which was previously approved by discharge of condition. The west-facing dormer serving the first floor study has been constructed wider but shorter. That's the one we talked about, the first one. The addition of the overhangs increases its bulkiness, reducing its subservience, but its visibility from surrounding areas outside the application site is very limited, screened by mature protected trees and woodland to the west and a narrow access drive to the north. As such, officers judge there's no demonstrable harm to the character and appearance of the area from this element of the scheme. The bedroom one dormer window on the east and west elevations, including at the rear of the bungalow, have been subject to the greatest change compared to the approved plans. So we've already said they're higher by 0.6 metres, which combining with the overhangs and the buttresses results in a bulkier and less harmonious appearance. The increased height gives it sort of visually imbalanced look. Nevertheless, the harm to the visual character and appearance of the area is very localised due to the siting of the bungalow off its narrow track, around 60 metres to the south of the adopted highway of Valley Road. Visibility from the wider surroundings is also limited by mature protected trees and woodland to the west, and trees in the long garden of the application site to the south, also covered by the TPO. Whilst consultation responses consider the size, bulkiness and contemporary design to be overbearing in character and appearance, the impact is, again, very localised. The alterations to the improved porch plan and the lack of weatherball cladding externally are not considered to result in harm. So the main impact really is these dormers. Arnold's Cross is characterised by a range of property designs. There's a variety of heights, layouts and architectural styles, with redevelopment often being a contemporary design and appearance and incorporating various external finishes, including cladding and weatherboarding. Although the proposal does not enhance its surroundings, a level of integration is achieved by maintaining an overall relatively modest height, and the dark colour is recessive against the tree's backdrop. The proposed development fails to demonstrate a high quality design that positively integrates with its surroundings, so it is contrary to policy E12. But taking account of the fallback position provided by the previous approvals, officers consider on balance that the level of harm to the character and appearance of the area is limited and not so substantial as to form a reason for refusal on design grounds. These photos have been taken from further away to try and identify the impact on the wider Dorset National landscape. The siting of the extensions within the settlement boundary, well screened by existing trees, landscaping and neighbouring development, is judged to result in minimal visual and landscape harm, particularly in wider local and wider views. So this is taken from the car park down here, these two. So we can see that the housing against the backdrop of the countryside, but actually officers haven't been able to identify the extension. We think that I'm not going to use my mouse because I'll get the wrong bit, but it appears to be well screened by trees. It's not evident from these viewpoints. The application site is on the settlement edge, and as we've already said, trees and landscaping provide screening. Bracken, this bracken to the east of the application site here, was visited as part of the case officer original assessment. That bungalow isn't served by any west-facing windows, but it has garden to the north and south, so nothing on this elevation, but garden here and here. So there's approximately 14 metres distance between building to building there. And given that the presence of mature vegetation on the boundary, officers have assessed the original proposals will not result in demonstrable harm in terms of overbearing impact or loss of light. It is acknowledged that the increase in the height of the east-facing dormer window does result in a bulkier appearance, you can see in this photograph, with the perception of increased intrusiveness and loss of privacy. However, impacts in terms of loss of light and overbearing development are not substantially altered so as to form significant harm and reason for refusal. During the application process, the planning agent confirmed that the two horizontal windows have been obscured glazed as required by a planning condition, and this would be required if permission is granted to avoid overlooking. On balance, officers have judged that the proposal is acceptable subject to conditions as set out in the agenda. Thank you.
Yes, we've got some public speakers on this. My first public speaker is an objection from Andrew Hicks. And if you come to the front table, there's a button on the microphone. Let's got a little picture of somebody speaking. Press that, it'll go red, and you've then got 3 minutes from when you start speaking.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for this opportunity to voice our objections. We've lived in the property and we fell in love with the property as soon as we saw it back in 2018. There's always been a bungalow there to the east. We could just see the side of the ridge there. It was laid back against the lower story, obviously, so it never really caused too much of an impact. It was very much in keeping with the local area and not too high an impact, it just raised a little bit above the heads there. I missed out on the original application for this. I fell ill with COVID in 2022. It didn't come out till October 2023, so a lot of this had already gone through. When it came to building it, the scaffolding went up and a big tent went over it, so we couldn't see what was going on. And we didn't think it was going to be too much of an impact, although we wondered why the tent was so high. They took the tent down and we were pretty much in shock. It's gone there's 2 feet over the ridge, and it wasn't supposed to be over the ridge, I believe. And but not only that, where they've gone up straight up, it's level with obviously the ground floor. So it now is the appearance is so much closer to us, and it towers up. And I think we're a little bit lower on the ground than the next door too. So when we're looking up at it, it's literally like that. And it's very much out of keeping with all the other views and the views from the road, the driveway, the walk up to the side of the house, to the front door. It's getting bigger and bigger as you walk down there. People's chins dropped, and we've had so many comments about it, not only from visitors, but from people on the road driving past, the people above us, along the top row. There's a lot of row houses above. Yeah, it's the size of it, it's the shape of it, it's the colour of it, but I love it. But it's just it's horrid. It's horrid. It looks like a black water cabin stranded in the top of the roof. It's that sort of thing. It's just it's if it were a lighter colour instead of just this black, on a blue sky, it just looked like a big fat black cloud there. And so I think I said quite a lot of the original meeting locally, and Ben Wilson, Councillor Ben Wilson, visited, and he was shocked as well, really, and couldn't really understand how the planning how it went through. An architect drew it up, and he must have drawn it up wrong, because that's why these alterations needed to be made. And then it's been tendered by builders, and you would think they'd spot a problem. And I can't imagine reputable, trades falling for that. Architect and
that's 3 minutes.
Yeah, okay. I've said it all.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. Mistakes, I should say.
Yes, all right.
Thank you. We do have another public speaker who is applicant or agent, Roddy Cooper. Agent or applicant? Applicant. Again, if you come to the desk, the microphone's already on, so. And again, 3 minutes from when you start speaking.
Thank you, councillors. So I think the planning officers have put the facts forward. I think if you look at, let me explain. The constructability is why the roof level has gone above the ridge. If you look at the variation of condition plan, and then look at the photos you have here, it's only the side buttresses that would, I think, impact the neighbouring property. The main roof level is still actually the same. The height has had to go up after speaking to builders because of structural reasons. So there's been no gain in floor area or height inside. It's because of the structural engineering details that the way they had to build. The black, that's been approved. Personally, I think it is less intrusive than a light coloured timber, but that's just the design is subjective. The retrospective planning application for the fenestrations and the different size of the dormer, again, is through aids per record to get the drawings right, and the porch alterations and the left hand, let's say the north dormer, have been changed just to make it easier and more cost effective to build. We've just clad existing structures rather than rip rooms apart and make other parts of the house inhabitable. Yeah, that's really it. I think the planning officer said everything else. Any alterations, retrospective alterations, I think would be substantially expensive and devastating. So, yeah, it's really down to constructability of how the roof had to be built on the dormer. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a statement now from local ward member, who's Councillor Dan Wilson. Sadly not able to be here today, but we have a statement from him, which will be read out by Councillor Sarah House, our Vice Chair. Okay.
Councillor Sarah House, Corfmallam Ward, reading a statement for Councillor Ben Wilson's South East Purbeck. It should be first noted that this matter was drawn to my attention in July 2025 by Worth and Travers Parish Council due to the imposing and out of character nature of the built structure. Following research on previous planning applications, it became clear the structure was not built in accordance with the planning permission PHOU 2023-02368, which was granted in August 2023. And it was only after the intervention of Dorset Council Planning Enforcement that this variation of condition has been brought forward. Also, please note that glazed windows were a specific condition of the grant to the original application, and this has been ignored in the construction. I disagree with the argument presented in the planning report that the harm of this structure to the character of the area in the heart of the Purbeck Valley and the Dorset national landscape is localised and therefore limited. By that argument, any structure built in a rural area with low density housing could be considered localised due to the limited opportunities to view it, and by extension, any structures could then be deemed permissible. This argument is clearly flawed, unacceptable in the context of Dorset's natural landscape, and needs to be refuted by this committee. Furthermore, the harm to the neighbouring property, even with attempts made to screen the structure through the use of tall hedgerows, is clearly evidenced in the photographs that were provided with my response. The newly built structure on the eastern upper floor of the house looms over the neighbouring property and is a cause of great distress to the residents. I believe that the only way for the committee to appreciate the impact of this built structure, both on the neighbouring property, but also to witness how out of character it is for the Dorset national landscape, is to perform a site visit. I therefore request to the committee chair that a site visit is arranged before this matter is determined. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz, do you have anything to say?
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that the obscure glazing has now been incorporated into the build.
Okay, thanks. I suppose the first thing we need to address is whether or not we feel there should be a site visit before taking this any further. So, does anybody want to propose a site visit? Mr. Brenton.
I know site visits aren't popular, but this building has already been made, constructed, so it's not going anywhere. So it's not as though we're stopping anyone proceeding with a problem. And if we decided to reject it, that would be also quite an issue, because one assumes one would have to put not just a stop notice, but all sorts of other legal wrangling about changing it. So, and when I first saw the pictures of the black gable looming over the hedge, I have it. And I think unless we see it, we can't decide whether or not to do anything about it. So I propose a site visit.
Thank you. Does that have anyone seconding it?
No.
I take it. That's a no. Which means I think we'll probably move on past that, having considered it. So do we have any questions for this? Councillor Coombs?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a view on this. If I break it down, can you put up the viewport that shows the range of changes? Right, yeah. So if I just look at the red circles, first three to the left, I have no issue with. No problem at all. My issue is with this dormer and the fact that it is above the ridge height. I have listened to the reasons that the case officer has given for the on balance recommendation, and everything that she said as a reason that she considered and came down on support, I take the opposite view. But she rattled through them so quickly I couldn't write them all down. But for everything that you said about the bulk, the impact, etc., 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 I've come down on the other side, and to me they are a reason for refusal. Because if we agree this, then we're almost saying, if you live somewhere where you can't see it, doesn't matter what you build. And actually, that to me is a very dangerous road to go down. Now, I know in defence of the applicant that they can build what they want without permission, but they take the risk of it not being acceptable. And the fact that it may cost a lot financially to make changes is not a material planning condition, and that is the risk that they take on if they go ahead without the permission to build what they're building as they wish to build it. So I know that if I move refusal, that you want to see a full explanation of my reasons, which is why I reiterate all the reasons that the planning officer said that they considered, and all the things that I would consider, but I've come down as a reason for refusal rather than grant. But I'm particularly concerned about the non-subservient nature of the dormer that brings it above the main ridge, and then all the knock-on impact that has on everything else. So that's where I'm at the moment. If I can get some help in finding those words, I'm more than happy to propose. Otherwise, at the moment, I would say that I'll be supporting refusal on this one.
Thank you, Tony. I'll leave before we get an answer from the officers, because they're busy looking into things. We've got Councillor Skeets and then Councillor Selby House. Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Skeets, West Morriston, Three-Legged Cross. I completely agree with Tony Coombs in the sense that if we let these types of, I don't know whether it's an error or just the construction doesn't work to the drawing, but the end result is that we've got something that wasn't approved, and I feel the same as Tony. I think that the impact is significant, and I would agree with what she said, and if she put it as a proposal, I think I would second it at the moment.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to those reasons a little bit later before taking a vote.
Yes.
Councillor Sally House.
Councillor Sally House, Corfland Ward. Oh, in the spirit of the member for Littlemore and Preston, I'm not taking a contrary view just for the sake of it, but I'm just saying that I see it slightly differently. I think I know Harmons Cross very well. I had a business in Swanage and drove through Harmons Cross every day for too many years. It is true. The officer saying that it is a very mixed style of construction in Harmons Cross and quite a mid-century look to it. This is probably the most dramatic of that brutalist style architecture, but to some it has a charm of itself. If we could just look at slide 14, which could be. Yeah, so I think we can see there that the nature of the colour and the construction is actually recessive, and actually would possibly be less recessive were it a lighter colour. Now, we live on the edge of Upton Heath, and one of the roads that we have running next to us is Corfe Lodge Road, which looks over the Triple SI and Ramsar site, and a very similar, very contemporary box-like construction was put there. And it was built over the winter, and it was very obvious, and everybody thought, oh my goodness, what on earth is that? And as you'll know, the vernacular in Corfe with regards to 33 Corfeview Road is it looked like an Amazon warehouse. However, the reality of that is after 2 or 3 years of weathering and leaves coming on the trees, actually it fits really well into the landscape and is fairly noticeable when you go for a dog walk. So I think it's unfortunate and there are many reasons why people have retrospective planning applications, but that shouldn't, by nature of it being retrospective, inform our view. But it is, when deviation comes from a permitted development, it is always lamentable when we look back on it as a retrospective. And as Councillor Brenton said, it's not going to disappear. It's there. So I would be minded to support this as it is, bearing in mind all of the comments that have been made by the planning officer and knowing the area. It's not visible from the road, and as we can see from this slide, neither is it visible from across the valley. So yeah, that's my starter for 10. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. I've got Councillor Flower next.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Spencer Flower, Verwood Ward, as I didn't say earlier on. I tend to agree with what Duncan said, actually. I think we're in a difficult place here because I didn't hear the officer say that there was a reason for refusal. There were comments around the change in some of the sizing and so on. And I agree with what was said over there about the dormer being a little bit out of character. But most of the comments I've heard were part of the original application, part of the original approval. The general sort of size and shape of the thing and the colouring is something that we'd already approved. I think we'd be in a difficult place if we were to attempt to refuse this application. So if Duncan's actually put a proposition on the table, I'm happy to second it as a grant.
Didn't hear the magic word proposal. I heard support.
I'm very happy to make a proposal that as per to grant, consider it to the recommendation and conditions from 17, 1, 2 and 3 and the relevant informatives.
Okay. So therefore, Spencer,
I'm happy with that. Yeah,
you're seconding that. Okay. We have 2 proposals. Before we go to any of them,
you've only got one. Never proposed it.
Chairman, I didn't make a formal proposal at that point. I said I was minded to, but I haven't done. So I'm happy that that is the substantive proposal at the moment, and we'll see where it goes.
So you're not proposing it, and so seconded it.
I think I said if Tony was to put it forward, I would have supported her.
Okay, so given all the conditionals, we have one proposal on the table, which is to approve as per the officer's recommendation. All right?
Yep.
And do we have any further comments? Questions? If not, we'll go to the vote. So all of those in favour of the proposal to grant this as per the officer's recommendation. All those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which excuse me. Abstentions, yes. Good. One. Yeah.
Because he's going to make a decision.
Which I guess gives me the casting vote, and I will vote with the support proposal. So I will vote to grant.
Bring it to committee first.
Very much. Which makes it 5-4-1. Which means we have the VOC 2025-05153 Moonhouse Valley Road Alice Cross Ridley. The variation because it is approved.
Doesn't have to say why you did that.
Thank you all.
Why bring it to committee if you're not going to?
That's the final. We have the final item on the agenda. Focus Centre, 107 High Street, Swanage, which will be presented by Victoria Judis. We have no public speakers for this. And Victoria, ready when you are.
Good afternoon, members. Victoria Chavis, Planning Officer.
The outcome in the sense of
The proposal before you is for fenestration changes to the Focus Centre in Swanage. It is brought before you because it is a council application on council-owned land. The application is for alterations to windows and doors on the front elevation. The application site is located in the urban area of Swanage, where the principle of the development is considered acceptable. The site is land owned by the council and lies within Swanage Conservation Area. You may recall that last year this committee granted minor extensions, alterations and landscaping to improve the provisions, accessibility and energy efficiency of the building. The proposal before you is for additional fenestration changes to our development because they will materially alter the external appearance of the building. The proposal is for the external alteration of 2 windows to become doors, 1 door to become a window, and for 1 window to be enlarged. All alterations are shown in blue to the top part of the plan. These alterations will be visible within the street scene as they are on the front elevation and the front internal side elevation of the building. The alterations will create new accesses, increase the light, and improve the accessibility to the building. No objections to the applications were received. The elevation plans on this site demonstrate the fenestration changes. The design and scale is functional and is considered acceptable within the context of the surrounding buildings, with no harm to the Swanage Conservation Area or neighbouring amenity anticipated. The proposal accords with Design Policy E12 and no material harm has been identified. Approval is recommended. Thank you.
Move approval, Chairman.
Seconded, Mr. Chairman.
We have no public speakers. Any questions? No questions? Is there no questions? Any comments? Any thoughts?
Seconded, Chairman.
Oh, you sneaky.
It looks perfectly sensible.
Yeah. So is there a proposal on the table?
Yes, Chair.
I've seconded it, Chairman. I don't care what it is.
Any further comments? No. All those in favour, please go. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's unanimous. Yeah, we've got the yes. In that case, we have well, first of all, the focus centre 107 High Street, Swanage, has been approved as per the officer's recommendation. We item 10 urgent items. We have no urgent items. Item 11, we exempt business. There is no exempt business, and therefore at 13:33.